Peace and love, family. How is everyone doing tonight? Thank you for joining us on this Sunday evening on another edition of the RAM Book Club, Resurgence of the African Mind, where we seek to liberate African minds by reading one unit of work at a time. As you all know, family, we are reading The Blueprint for Black Power by Amos Wilson. We have been pushing through 6-7 months strong. Last week, we hit up chapter 24, The Black Consumer and the Economics of Afrocentrism. We talked about Black consumer power, the civil rights movement, and other things. This week, we're going to talk about the Black consumer and economics of Afrocentrism. Oh, wait, I think I just read that. Okay, I'm sorry. My bad, family. Yeah, but we're going to talk about Black consumer power, alien merchants and Black consumers, civil rights movement, spending habits of the Black consumer. Last week, we talked about the Black church, so I could correct myself. We're also going to talk about Native Americans and their economic power, Black tourism as an industry, the power of refusal, and much more. My name is Lily La Poete Speaks. To join the panel, of course, you know you want to go to lilylapoetespeaks.com, click on the Blueprint for Black Power tab, scroll down and click on the appropriate link for the appropriate chapter. I am the author of Perceptions of a Misplaced African, Volume 1, available hardback on lilylapoetespeaks.com in our marketplace and available on Kindle on your favorite device from Amazon. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to let the panel introduce themselves.
All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. My name is dr.maat. Got to be honest with you, Sister Alima, it still feels funny, but my name is Dr. Maat. I am the co-founder of Ed Anime Productions and the executive producer of Meltrek. All right. And I'm holding in my hand the Meltrek series. Okay. Meltrek is an animated series that teaches children history from an African-centered perspective. Currently, we have 2 films available. We have Meltrek Exploring Ancient Africa. Meltrek Episode 1, Exploring Ancient Africa, and Meltrek Episode 2, Exploring the Pre-Columbian Americas. Visit edanimeproductions.com to get your copy of Meltrek today. And if you missed the URL, just simply go to Google, type in Meltrek, and links to our website will generate. We also have a book that we just released. I love this book so much. It's the Meltrek Exploring Ancient Africa storybook. And I'm trying to do a little flip through so you guys could see the images, but let me hold it like this and then maybe show it like this. I don't know, y'all. I'm trying to do a flip through just to show you what's in the book. But we have a book available that goes along with the Meltrek Episode 1 film. Get this book, family. It's available, $17.99. A book that will teach your children about culture, history, culture, and achievements of African people. We also have a coloring book available. You can get all of these items from edanimeproductions.com, or just simply Google Meltrek, and links to purchase the merchandise will populate. Also, family, support your own. Visit buyblack.com or coreoil.com to get your Black-owned and operated, or toothbrushes by Black-owned and operated company. As you can see, I've already started using them. All right, Core Oil. Also, get your laundry detergent. True laundry detergent. Okay, you can go to trueproducts.com, or you can get this from WeBuyBlack.com. Black folks are now making our own laundry detergent, so we got to support, family. Tennis shoes.
Yes.
Shout out to brother Benjamin Njai and Pantherwear. Okay, we have our own tennis shoes at this point, brothers and sisters. I bought the red. I heard that they did have pink for a second, but I got the red Pantherwear shoes. You can hit up brother Benjamin Njai on Facebook, or go to pantherwear.com to get your pair of Pantherwear sneakers. Then we have Abjuwear sneaker. Well, I don't know if it's sneaker and clothing, but a sneaker company by brother Anka of the Armin Ross squad. Okay, you can go to abjuwear.com to get a pair of sneakers from him. All right, so brothers and sisters, we at a point where we gotta support ourselves, man. We can't keep running to Walmart and all these other places and spending our money. I mean, we can, but we gotta support ourselves. You know, I mean, Sister Alima, I remember one time we were talking, and she said, Dr. Maat, we live in an environment where it's almost impossible to just solely buy Black. And I had to agree with her. That's true. But we do need to spend our money, or make an effort to spend our money with our own people, in order to amass enough money to invest in building our own life-sustaining and life-giving institutions. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic. Again, my name is Dr. Maat. I'm looking forward to this discussion. Sister Alima, I'm looking at this book And look, I remember when we first started the book, we were here. And now we've read, oh my gosh, hold up. I'm on the wrong page. Let me go here. We are now here. We've read the majority of the book. And so I'm extremely happy, that we set our minds to something and we're doing it, Sister Alima. We're doing it. And so I'm happy to be a part of this panel. I enjoy the conversations each week. I learned so much from not only just reading the book, but the information that the panel members bring to the discussion. I've learned a great deal. So I'm happy to be here, humbled to be here. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Sister Camille.
Peace, family. Enile Eku Avo, which means hello and welcome. My name is Camille Gaynor-Jones. It is my honor to be a part of tonight's program and to sit on the panel with the illustrious family and have this wonderful chat and learning experience. I'm a professional drummer, an educator, a producer, and a clinician, and an aspiring day trader, stock day trader. You can check me out on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, also Instagram. My website is www.camillegaynorjones.com. You can check out my CDs and my lessons for young musicians, young drummers coming up. I'm really looking forward into getting into this next chapter that our ancestor, Baba Amos Wilson, had the foresight to formulate, to start to implement and teach our family and friends. And I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Ashe.
Ashe. One of the brothers.
Every time.
David missed.
All right. Hello.
Uh-oh.
Yes. Good evening, Black family. I'm the name Chaos, and I'm here tonight to continue this wonderful journey in the Rand Book Club, breaking down the blueprint for Black Power from Amos and Wilson. And like always, if you want to post any links or any products or anything, like not products, but like any links, or you can locate near the Intellectual Warfare group on Facebook, and you will find it with the funny banner. It's like with a bunch of symbols, and like always, that's where you go find and interact. And that's pretty much it for now.
All right.
Any other brothers? Let me see. Who else is on the panel? You got Brother Chaos, Brother Travis, Brother Impo.
Brother Impu?
Yeah, that was me. That was me that speak already.
Brother Impu? We can't hear you.
He's on mute.
We can't hear you, brother. You might have to leave out and come back in. Click off and come back in. Brother Travis? Oh, Brother Travis did say he was going to be in and out, sis, so he might not be there right now, so we can go ahead and continue.
Okay, cool. So, sis, again, I'm looking forward. Let me crack my book open. I lost my place when I was showing how much we've read. But I'm looking forward to tonight's discussion. Dr. Amos Wilson, as always, provides us with a lot of information. Let me get here. Okay, here we go. All right, the Black consumer and the economics of Afrocentrism. So, sis, do you want to start it off?
Go ahead, Queen.
All right. I have to be honest. I don't have anything highlighted for pages 588 or 559. I started highlighting on page 590. So if you have something for these two pages, sis, point it out to me. I can read it and go ahead. Let me just start.
Because they were just giving some of Dubois quotes, and I didn't really think he said anything that stood out.
Yeah, he did. It didn't. He was just talking about, us living in a consumer society and how our tastes are conditioned such to, I guess, fuel this nation's economy. And I'll read the first paragraph. So he says that we live in a consumer society. Consumer confidence, taste, and spending greatly influence the character and rates of expansion or contraction of the nation's economy. And with these, the increase or decrease in job opportunities and standards of living. The same principle applies in the more particular case of the Black consumer relative to the character and power of the Black American economy. Again, we refer to W.E.B. Du Bois' prescient insights in this regard as outlined in his book, The Dust of Dawn. Risking the dulling effects of redundancy, we think it important at this juncture to repeat portions of earlier quotations from Du Bois. After carefully considering a number of possible solutions to the economic plight of the Black community, Du Bois clearly proposed that the most helpful solution is a racial attempt to use the power of the Negro as a consumer, not only for its economic uplift, but in addition to that, for its economic education. Recall that Du Bois advised the African-American he advised that the African-American must intelligently and carefully and farsightedly plan for his entrance into the new economic world. He further indicated that he saw this chance of planning in the role which the Negro plays as consumer. He went on to say that in the future reorganization of industry, the consumer, as against the producer, is going to become the key man. All right. So he's saying that the power lies basically in the hands of the consumer. He says, now as a consumer, the Negro approaches economic equality much more nearly than he ever has as producer. Organizing then and conserving and using intelligently the power which 12 million people, the size of the Black American population in 1930, have through what they buy, it is possible for the American Negro to help in rebuilding the economic state. Furthermore, Du Bois contended that the Black consumer, social institutions are almost entirely the institutions of consumers. And it is precisely along the development of these institutions that he can move in general accordance with economic development of his time, of the large white group, and also in this way evolve unified organization for his own economic salvation. All right. And he said a rather cursory review of the character and structure of the African-American consumer market fully substantiates Du Bois' contention. So now he's going to get into the character and structure of the African-American consumer market. There's a box at the bottom of 589, box 24-1, where he talks about the Black buying power between 1990 and 1995. Sis, I didn't see anything on this page that stood out, in this box, but there are little things that kind of stood out on page 590. So did you want me to read any?
Just a little section at the beginning. Black buying power is on the rise. And it said that the Selig Center for Economic Growth of the University of Georgia projects that the nation's Black buying power will rise from 298 billion in 1990 to 399 billion in 1995. So I just thought that was interesting because that's how much we were spending then, because, they estimate now. At first I was thinking maybe the estimate was far-fetched, but now I know that it's not, because if that's what we were spending in the 90s, and they're saying we spend close to $1 trillion a year, Black people as consumers. So that sounds about right. If we were spending hundreds of billions in the 90s.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So that's the only thing I wanted to point out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've
heard people say that, sis. Ain't no way we spend that much money. Shit.
I've heard it. I've heard people say that, or people say that 1.2 trillion dollars. They say you got to think about it, sis. It's not all cash. It's also credit, and it's also this, and and try to, either way,
it's spending power. Don't matter how you look at it.
Absolutely, sis. But people try to clean it up and make it look like it's not that bad. Apologists, sis. We have our share of apologists, and so they try to clean it up by saying it's not cash. Some of it is credit. Some of it is loans. But I'm with you. If you spent it, you spent it, right? No matter how you got it. If you spent it, you spent it. At the top of page 590, you know, I had the definition of Black buying power defined. It says that Black buying power is defined as the total personal income of Black residents that is available after taxes for spending on goods and services. So it's the disposable personal income of the Black residents of a specified geographic area. So that's how they're defining Black power, Black buying power. Now in this box, he also defines, they use the term consumer price index, all right? Now consumer price index says the principal or most important measure of inflation is a measure of the prices the average consumer pays for a fixed amount of goods and services currently compared to a prior base period. A prior base period. So the only thing that I have, sis, highlighted on this box. Okay, so he says right here, we have seen the African-American share of the overall buying power of many states, counties, and cities are crucial to their commercial and economic well-being. So he's just basically talking about the amount of money that we spend.
Exactly.
And how, you know, that we do have a share, you know, in the overall buying power of many states. He says counties and cities, he said, and are crucial to their commercial and economic well-being. He says this means that if appropriately organized and directed, Black buying power could serve as a very effective political and economic instrument for advancing the community's interests. The overall political and economic weight of the community could be markedly increased if Black buying power were combined with the power of the Black vote. However, the maximization of Black power would occur with the capture and control of the community's own internal markets through active internal as well as external trade and investment, combined with judicious use of electoral, social, political, organizational, and consumer acumen. All right. So he talks about that, and then he goes on to talk about, you know, us, you know, building an economic or launching an economic platform and some of the things that we could do, you know, or the benefits of having our own economic platform. But he's saying that, you know, these things, we won't be able to realize some of these goals. He says that these goals can only be achieved if the African-American community becomes acutely self-aware and self-knowing. In addition, it must muster the courage to require its African-centered consciousness and identity in a positive ethnocentrism. These orientations must be combined with its irresistible determination to be liberated from white domination and its utter dependence on white American European economic power and legacy. For its survival and well-being, it must seek unrelentingly to realize the existence of a powerful Pan-African political economic system which can liberate African people the world over from poverty, dependence, and low esteem. So in this box, he's just basically breaking down what Black buying power is and telling us how we can basically transform our communities if we understand how to organize our Black buying power and to our benefit. All right. So then the next subsection talks about alien merchants and Black consumers. All right. Alien merchants and Black consumers. Now, Sister Alima, you already know, sis, it's no secret that, you know, who dominates the business institutions in our community, mostly Koreans, everyone, Asians, Arabs, and whites.
Exactly.
You know, so,
like this for who knows how long.
Absolutely. And you know, since I actually thought this stuff was normal, like you know, growing up, you know, over in East Baltimore, at my grandma's house, you know, it was normal to go to the cleaners and see an Asian person, or go to the, you know, go to the corner store and spend your money with the Asian person. Like all of this stuff was normal, sis. You know what I mean? Like I look back on, you know, my childhood years, and we never thought anything of it. You know, even the ice cream man that would drive around the neighborhood would be an Arab. You get what I'm saying? And we never thought anything. This was normal in, you know, in the Black community. And it's like that in every Black community in Baltimore. You know, so it was nothing to see an Asian, you know, an Asian store owner or Asian owned dry cleaners, or even they have a lot of hip hop fried chickens in Baltimore. I don't know if they have them down there in Atlanta, but in Baltimore, man, we're saturated with like hip hop fried chicken, which is owned and controlled by Arabs.
Mm-hmm. I remember my mother used to say that. She said, isn't it interesting that as greedy as the white man is, the only place he won't go shut up shop is in the hood.
Who said this? Mommy said this?
My mom.
That's true. They won't.
That was interesting, and that's true, because as greedy as they are, you think they would, but they won't. They stay away from the hood.
Yeah, they stay away. They absolutely stay away.
Well, that's why the Asians can come in, because I guess they got the Asians and Arabs. I guess they got enough balls to come in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they, like you said, they will stay away. They may put a supermarket, somewhere here and there, like a Giant or a Save-A-Lot or Food Lion or a Food King or something like that, a Safeway.
Mm-hmm.
They may do that, but like you said, no, they're not going to put corner stores and dry cleaners and fast food places. No, they don't do that. They typically don't do that. So in this section, it says alien merchants and Black consumers. He says that the importance of the African-American consumer, the power that he or she collectively represents, is difficult to exaggerate. Hundreds of millions of dollars per year are spent by non-Black business establishments in their pursuit of the Black consumer. Relative to the African-American economic system and the future development of Black power, which must be based on it, the behavior of the Black consumer is vitally crucial. As indicated earlier, the African-American economic system, i.e. African-American business and service establishments, have literally been boycotted by not only the non-Black consumer, but also by the Black consumer. Now, Sister Alima, you and I talk about this a lot. We talk about this a lot, how it seems like, we're almost locked as Black entrepreneurs. It's kind of like you're locked out of your own market. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So he says that the Black entrepreneur has been practically excluded from both Black and non-Black marketplaces. This starvation of Black business has permitted other ethnic groups to economically thrive, or at least survive in the Black consumer market, to monopolize and to use it perniciously, use it to perniciously exploit the Black community as a whole, while at the same time disrespecting it, demonstrating racial hatred towards it, and not supporting it politically, socially, institutionally, or in any other socially positive manner. Even as these alien merchants have invaded the community and earned their living and fortunes they in large part have disdained to employ its residents, to pay a living wage to the few they reluctantly employ, and have seldom, if ever, entered into partnership or any other type of mutually beneficial economic arrangements with the local Black business persons. This, in addition to the refusal of these merchants and their families to reside in the community or to contribute significantly to its fundamental well-being, is tantamount to wholesale exploitation. Moreover, their presence drains the community of valuable monetary and human resources, thereby impoverishing it and diminishing its quality of life. So then, family, on page 592, I'm backtracking a little bit, 592 to 593. Let me show you. On page 592 to 593, there's a chart. This chart lists the Black buying power by place and residence for U.S. in the states from 1994 to 1995. And he's saying that Black buying power, so the Black buying power, the state that had the highest Black buying power in 1994 and 1995, sis, the top 5 were California, New York, Texas, DC, Maryland, and Mississippi. Yeah, they were like the top, and I read them kind of out of order, but they were the top. Oh no, I'm looking at 2 different charts. One was the Black buying power by place and residence, and then you have Black share of total buying power. All right, so on page 592, top three states for Black buying power was California, New York, and Texas. All right, in 1994 and 1995. Now, the Black share of total buying power for U.S. in the states during 1994 to 1995, the top 3 were DC, Maryland, and Mississippi. All right. So family, if you don't have the book, you can go back to this portion and like pause it and read through the chart. All right. Sister Alima, anything on page 594? Sister
Hello?
Camille,
Yes?
anything on page 594, sis?
I was sending out some links. I'm sorry. Yes, I had the next paragraph.
I had a call. I didn't even know my mic was muted.
Yes. You had something, sis?
I was just reading over what I had, but it's just reiterations.
Right. Okay.
And since
the bottom of the page,
family, if we
the
can,
last paragraph.
oh, just let me say this real quick, family. If we can, because this chapter is long, pay attention to what people are reading to make sure you don't come right behind them and like read the same thing, because like Baba does that a lot.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, he does.
He has a lot of reiteration.
Right.
The top of page 595, though, I think this is important, where it says table 24-3. The mostly suburban white population has been making war against the inner cities over the last 20 years. This while under the guise of multiculturalism or diversity, its merchants have developed ingenious ways to further exploit the Black consumer, and through him and her, the whole Black community. In the end, this type of exploitation cannot but cause the economic collapse and social disintegration of the very large segments of the African American community. But the rapacious white American and immigrant merchant communities cannot be held fully responsible for those calamitous circumstances. The Black consumer is spending monies with alien merchants, Black depositors, and investors, placing their wealth in outside institutions, unconscious of the self-defeating, disempowering outcomes of such behavior, unconscious of the tremendous potential power they are literally tossing to the winds, must share a great part of the responsibility for the economic and social degradation of the African American community.
That was powerful. I actually have an asterisk next to that. That was powerful. So he's saying that, look, you know, you can't blame it all on alien merchants. You're out here spending your money with these alien merchants. You know, he says, so, you know, I can't blame them. You know, they're not putting a gun to our heads and saying, come into my store. You know, at this point, it is a truth. And it's just, I don't think that the vast majority of us realize, you know, that when we spend the majority of our money outside of our communities, that we are empowering other people and at the same time disempowering ourselves and also impoverishing ourselves. And I think that a lot of us don't understand that. So when they hear buy Black and you support Black, buy Black, I don't think Sister Alima and Sister Camille that they understand what that means. You know, I think a lot of people hopped on the buy Black bandwagon. I think it was more of a bandwagon effect, but I don't think people really understand the importance of buying Black, why it is vital to our survival, why it is imperative to our survival. I don't think that most people understand that. I just wanted to also point out, Sister Camille, I know you stopped at the top of page 96, but on page 594, Baba tells us that we experience economic racism and how it's not uncommon for Black consumers to pay, you know, twice the amount for certain items than, you know, he says middle-class white consumers. So we even spend more money when we're spending money in the Black community with these alien merchants. They're upchucking or upcharging the items. You know what I mean? So we're paying, it says 2.5 times more for certain items. All right. And then he gives us an example. All right. So I just wanted to add that we, you know, not only are we giving our money away to these alien merchants, they're actually practicing economic racism towards us by making us pay extra for the very same items that white middle class consumers purchase.
And see, with that thought in mind, then that's why we need to make sure that the businesses that we are starting are businesses that we need. And I'm going to keep saying this over and over because we have too many businesses that we don't fucking need. Right. And the reason why the Arab man is going to get the money or the Chinese man is going to get the money, because when you put those type of stores in poor neighborhoods, a lot of those people don't have the means to get around. That's number one. Number two, they don't have the money to go to more expensive places. So when you're struggling and you're just trying to make it, you're going to go what's closest and what's cheapest. And that's why a lot of times those places get patronized. A lot of times I see it, family. We don't even like them motherfuckers. But if you don't have a goddamn choice, you don't have a fucking car, you don't have family in that city, guess what? I'm gonna have to go up here to this wing spot to get something to fucking eat to feed my children. So it's a deeper dynamic than us just not wanting to support each other. It really is. It's much bigger than that.
I agree. It's a culmination of a lot of things.
Absolutely.
You know, that you know, people used to just walk into the corner store and doing all their shopping. You know, like if you live in Brooklyn or Harlem, that's what people do.
You buy everything right there from the bodega. You get everything from there.
So like you said, Sister Alima, that's why it's imperative to open up businesses that actually fulfill the needs of the community or satisfy the needs and wants of the community.
And we don't do that oftentimes. We don't really have those type of businesses a lot of times. We don't. And that's why we fall short, in my opinion.
Well, one question I do want to ask. If anybody can remember, how many Black bodega stores we normally see in our communities?
I can't think of any. Matter of fact, I can think of one that I can recall, but all of them were Dominicans and Arabs.
Okay, so that's the problem right there. I think one time I came across one that was one, and then for some reason they kind of closed down a little bit for certain reasons. But I don't really see any full Black. I know one gas station that was owned by a Black man, and they had some food that they prepare food, but you know that was it. But everywhere I could look on the street, mostly is an Arab or somebody from South America open shop.
Well,
you know, so right there, that need that there, a lot of people don't see need that the things that people constantly will go and buy. You know, and so there's the barber shops. What else? I can't even name. Some of them are so common. It's ridiculous, man. The ones that you see that's more developed than anything else that really we need for a community, you know, besides the other major business, corporation business, but like the necessary things, like, you know, you go down the street to get, you got to go to the Arab or the Latino man for that. It's shameful. It's very shameful. And one thing I do want to say, that caught my attention, if I can remember, because, you know, my train of thought just slipped me, was in regards to, our people, like, they say that they're not putting the gun to our head. I agree, they're not. But it goes back to, again, that most of our people don't see the value. Say, you know, when that money goes, it most likely will not come back to your community. You know? So they know that our people are not going to create any options. They're going to go willing with their dollars to give to them. They know this because they said they are convinced that most of our people don't want to grow or sustain their own. So that's why they can easily set their shots here, because say when you have no options, you're gonna go to that man.
That's right.
All right.
I was going to say really briefly that you know, I remember when Black people used to own all the stores in the neighborhood. Like when I grew up in Queens and in New York, all the stores were owned by Black people on 125th Street. Right. All the stores in Brooklyn, all the bodegas, what they weren't even called bodegas, it was called grocery stores. I mean, my father owned the grocery store on the corner. We had a corner store. So it just became like, once again, when Black people were able to work in corporate America, they abandoned all those things.
That's right.
They abandoned having stores. They abandoned having their own businesses. You know, to work for someone else in Manhattan, you know, and I think that changed the whole landscape of the neighborhood. I mean, yours had the Chinese cleaners, but then you still had Black people that had cleaners. Exactly. And all the grocery stores. Exactly. All the mechanics.
That's right.
There was a few, because I lived on the borderline of Rosedale and you know, Long Island. So once you crossed the line, that was where white people lived. So you still, and plus those neighborhoods had been pioneered by African Americans, and when white people moved out. So you still had a few merchants there, but the overall, you did your shopping and everything with Black people. The supermarkets. I went to school with the kid whose parents owned the supermarket. We're talking like an A&P. We went to high school together, you know, and So Black people own businesses. So it's like really weird to me to see all of this,
Right.
you know, and you know, my father still owns businesses. So it was like really weird to see that turnover like that, not just giving up all your money like that.
Right. This is the same thing that my great aunts and them said too, you know, that all the Black people owned everything.
Yeah. My aunts own beauty. They own their own beauty parlors, funeral homes. My family comes from, I mean, they had businesses. People own businesses in my family. So it was just, this is like, you know, just seeing this is like really weird to me.
Because, you know, we just like, we knew that we had to do for ourselves at one point. And once
right.
where the white man said, well, you can come in too. And then we felt, because it's like for some reason we always feel like we missing out on some shit with these motherfuckers.
I know.
Sister Alima, you know Bob are going to get into that in the next 2 pages.
Oh yeah, exactly. Okay,
he's going to bring it. He's getting ready to get into that. I believe he's going to start talking about that on page 598 and 599. So he's going to get into that.
Let's get it.
Yeah, let's get it. So he says on page 596, where at the top it says the civil rights movement, a consumer movement. So a lot of people believe that when the civil rights movement occurred in the 60s, that it was just about legislation, and it wasn't. Dr. Amos Wilson says it must be kept in mind that the civil rights movement was as much a Black consumer movement as it was a rights movement, okay? And he said that much of its thrust involved the struggle for equality in consumption privileges on the part of Blacks, the right and privilege of Black consumers to spend their earnings in the same ways and places as whites. There we go, Sister Alima. The landmark Montgomery bus boycott was essentially a Black consumer movement. Sit-ins at lunch counters and other white-owned businesses and institutions were also Black consumer demonstrations. In these and many other instances, Black consumers withdrew their economic support from offending white institutions, and through sit-ins, marches, demonstrations, and other tactics, blockaded consumers of other ethnic groups from supporting these entities as well. Its conscious and judicious use of its consumer power and capacity to influence the consumer behavior of other ethnic groups and individuals permitted it to revolutionarily transform the American legal, social, and economic landscape, especially in the South, in terms of increased economic opportunity, increased jobs and wages, affirmative action on any number of levels and arenas. The civil rights movement, strongly supported by consciously directed Black consumer behavior, was by all accounts significantly effective. In this context, it should be recalled that Black consumer power in the alliances forged with other Black consumer groups was of the greatest importance in transforming the South African political and economic landscape. So then on page 597, I'm not going to read this. He talks about the Operation Breadbasket and Operation Push, which was an organization led by Reverend Jesse Jackson. And Push stood for, the acronym Push stood for People United to Save Humanity. At the bottom of the page, he gives us an instance of the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson in Operation Push. And basically, I think they boycotted, was it Coca-Cola, sis? I'm kind of perusing it. So they boycotted Coca-Cola, and you know, and as a result, it says that Coca-Cola pledged to increase its deposits and loans with Black-owned banks and to raise its annual contributions to Black-owned organizations to $250,000 and to give Black-owned advertising agencies a responsibility for a company brand with a budget of $8 million. So that, you know, that's how they ended the boycott. All right. So he goes on to talk about the Black civil rights and consumer movement. All right. Now, I love this page, Sister Alima, because it's kind of like he gives us the pros and cons of the civil rights movement. Right. And we never hear about the cons. You know, a lot of people, you know, we talk about the Voters Act that was signed, and I want to say it was 1965 that was passed. We talk about the Montgomery boycott. So we focus on the legislation that was passed during these times, which are the pros of the civil rights movement, but we never talk about the cons of the civil rights movement. Some of us do, but we rarely talk about that. So in this particular section on page 598 to 599, he gets into, he gives us the cons, the pros and the cons of the civil rights movement. So he says that the civil rights movement, particularly in its manifestation as a consumer movement, undoubtedly expanded job and economic opportunities for African Americans, actually contributing to the remarkable expansion of Black middle and professional classes, as well as markedly reduced discrimination against Black consumers. However, such advances brought mixed results, some positive, others negative. Sister Camille, read the rest of that for me, sis.
While the expansion in economic and employment opportunities were commendable, and legal and social removal of legal and social restrictions on the freedom of Blacks are to be applauded, the interests of overall Black business and economic development were not well served. They, in a number of important respects, may actually have been harmed. A case can be made in this instance when we recognize the fact that the economic emphasis of the civil rights movement was on jobs as supplied by the white businesses instead of economic expansion, on income rather than wealth, spending rather than saving. The freedom to spend with white businesses and establishments became almost synonymous with political freedom or first-class citizenship in the minds of many African Americans. Free and unrestricted consumption of white-produced consumables became identical to or indicative of freedom per se. In actuality, while this freedom of consumption was not to be denied, it effectively led to the redistribution of Black consumer spending away from Black businesses toward white business establishments, with the result that many Black businesses lost a large portion, if not their complete, Black clientele. Many relatively prosperous Black business districts went into irredeemable or underwent serious retardation and contraction as it was deserted or left unsupported by Black consumers. In many ways, the civil rights movement proved to be a boon to white-owned businesses by providing them with a large new clientele, a new market, and a very sizable pool of money unavailable to them before.
Hold up, wait a minute. I just want to read that again. In many ways, the civil rights movement proved to be a boon to white-owned businesses by providing them with a large new clientele, a new market, and a very sizable pool of money unavailable to them before. We never talk about this. We never.
Yeah, they tricked us. You know, they tricked us with that whole thing. It was like, well, we might as well get that money. We don't have to, we can still,
But did they trick us or did we play ourselves? Because I'm going to lean forward and play our motherfucking selves. Y'all been trying to put everything on the white man. Everybody was so busy trying to be, I got to get in there and spin and get me a cheeseburger too.
I agree.
Motherfucking played instead of staying over there where we was prospering and living well, and where the white man on the average was semi making it. And then here comes this big boom, as they say, of all these Black consumers that weren't there before. And then there goes the riches. And then we just left our businesses to go to shit. Like, oh, well.
Yeah, I think, that helped them to get the Black dollar. Not getting your dollars, but they still could still oppress you in other ways through legislature. So that's where the trick part came in. Because I guess Black people believe that by having access to all these things, being able to sit, like I like to say, sitting next to white people does not give you, doesn't give you access to, any type of wealth, but I guess also because of the, just what we were going through as a people at that time, that the way we were treated, as second class citizens, as nobody. So our lack of self-esteem played into that as well. It's like, well, and we still suffer from that. And so they, they study us. They have think tanks. So they know what our mental, what we're thinking and how their oppression has, what has done to our mental capabilities and our self-esteem. So they play on that as well. And so that's why they, you know, they didn't have to, because they control all the money. So it's like they didn't have to take out money, but they took the money and they still oppress you, you know, in other ways. So it's like now you're completely under their control. You don't clothe yourself, you can't feed yourself, and you don't educate yourself. And before when we were educating ourselves, we were more aware of systematic oppression. Exactly. So in that way, because they're educating us, and a lot of people don't speak of once they integrated the schools, they fired all the black teachers and put white teachers in there. That was another one of their tricks. So we were educated by our own people, so we understood what was going on out here. And now, you know, the teachers are white, kids identify with white people. And so a lot of times when you tell young people today, you know, support your own, don't disrespect one another and all that kind of stuff, they think you're being racist.
Yeah, it's that religion, man. It's that religion, because I ask myself all the time,
it is that religion.
People be oppressed and be enslaved by another group of people and actually trust anything that comes out of their motherfucking mouth.
That's what I say. I'm like,
all day long, because at some point, your survivalistic, humanistic, common sense nature should kick the fuck in and say that we shouldn't trust these people. But then when you have that dynamic of religion included, and you have a God that tells you that you should trust people and blah, 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 then all your inhibitions go out the window. And I just think that, I just think that's deep.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Absolutely. I mean, you won't even fight for yourself. You know, you won't speak up for yourself. I mean, it's just like unchecked trust.
I think that we were just for like the wrong, I don't want to say the wrong thing during the civil rights movement. You know, I can understand. I know that, and Brother Travis taught me this. He's like, Doc, you know, when you look at these things, you have to study things, you know, in its historical context, right? So you got to think about the condition of Black folks, where our mind was. And we just wanted to be at the goddamn table. Really?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You have to think of the mindset and the level of, I mean, back then, you know, they would just drag you out of some place. White people just did whatever the stories my father and my great-grandfather tell.
Religion has something to do with that, because I'm just not convinced that just to be inclusive, like we would just drop our guard down just to be included with white people.
Oh no, religion definitely has something to do with it.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, and that just makes Black people sound stupid. And I know that we're not that. So it's got to be a deeper dynamic than us just wanting to be with these motherfuckers, because I think that's a little weak.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think back then, but nowadays, because you don't see, you know, it's like you have to be kind of sophisticated to really understand white supremacy today.
I don't think
because
I think it's more in your face than anything. I think people accept it. I don't think
it's all in your face now.
Okay,
it's all in your face now.
So Dr. Maat, can you go ahead and move forward for me, Queen?
Yeah, let me move forward.
Everybody's talking over each other. It's not gonna work.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, I saw that. But check this out. So I just want the panel, not the panel, but the people who are listening, you know, that during the civil rights movement, he says, and I want to reiterate this, that the economic emphasis of the civil rights movement was on jobs as supplied by white businesses instead of on community-based economic expansion, on income rather than wealth. This was our mentality. He said on spending rather than saving. The freedom to spend money with white businesses and establishments became almost synonymous with political freedom or first-class citizenship in the minds of many African Americans. Free and unrestricted consumption of white-produced consumables became identical to or indicative of freedom per se. Just wanted to read that, family, to you. So at the middle of page 599, he says, curiously, attempts by some Blacks to improve the inner cities and to expand the community of Black-owned businesses supported by a loyal core of Black consumers was viewed by some other Blacks as forms of self-segregation. That's what you were talking about earlier, Sister Camille, forms of self-segregation as indicative of separatism, anti-integrationist, anti the struggle for racial equality. It must be noted that the enormously increased spending by Black consumers with white-owned businesses, as well as businesses owned by other ethnic groups, the broadly expanded opportunities for Black consumers to enter into markets previously closed to them, the remarkable opportunities for non-Black owned businesses establishments to penetrate previously restricted consumer markets in the Black community, to very significantly increase their consumer client bases. He already talked about that. Their gross incomes and net incomes were not paralleled by white and other ethnic group consumer spending in the opposite direction, i.e. spending with the Black community. So he's basically saying that during this movement, you know, we were fighting to spend our money with white-owned businesses, but it didn't work the other way around. So we were fighting to spend our money with white-owned businesses, and you know, and in turn, we allowed them to penetrate our markets along with other ethnic groups. But he's saying that this didn't work both ways. It wasn't like, you know, we spent our money with them and then they spent their money with us. So it wasn't a bilateral benefit. Okay, it was really a unilateral benefit. Okay,
because white people weren't the ones trying to boycott with us to go spend with us. It was the other way around. So if you think about it realistically, why would they? They weren't spending with us before, but we were segregated. So why would all of a sudden, because we were able to spend with them, they'll say, well, let's go and spend with the Blacks now? I mean,
absolutely. Absolutely. So he says, as indicated above, the non-Black consumer has never demonstrated much of an inclination to spend with Black businesses. White consumers, in fact, distance themselves from the possibility of spending with Black firms to any real significant extent by literally leaving the central cities. White-owned business establishments obliged white consumers by the construction of suburban and rural shopping malls and the wholesale movement of business and production facilities out of the inner cities into the suburban and rural areas as well. Consequently, so what they did, sis, they left.
Yeah.
They got out of the inner cities. They left the inner cities, right? When we started moving, they left the inner cities, and guess what? Those white-owned businesses packed up and went to the suburbs and the rural areas with them. So it's like, you know, we were fighting. It's so I don't want to call it funny, sis, but we were fighting to integrate with these people and spend our money with these people, and they were literally distancing themselves from us, like literally. So it's kind of, I'm like, with you, sis, when does it kick in? When does
it kick in? Like, at what point do you get like, these motherfuckers don't like me? I mean, they raped my great grandma, you know what I'm saying? They won't give me no loan. You got to go out and pick cotton. Like, when the fuck? I mean, that religion is deep. That religion is a hell of a drug, man.
Woo. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes, it is. And that's why I love, you know, the documentary 1804. Because what I saw during that Haitian Revolution is that when they remember that prayer of I think his name was Bookman, the prayer of Bookman, and they started returning back to the spiritual systems, African spiritual systems, and they were calling on Ogun. You get what I'm saying? The spirit of Ogun to help them fight, you know, the French and the British. And he was saying it wasn't, you know, when I was looking at it, I said once they let go of those those religions of their oppressors and they return back to African spiritual systems, that's when they mustered up, sis, the strength and the energy to free themselves, to liberate themselves. But they had to liberate themselves mentally and spiritually first before they physically could liberate themselves. And that was the beauty, or that's the message that I saw when I was watching 1804. They united. And they shed themselves or eradicated themselves from the religion of their oppressors. Because in African spirituality, you could correct me if I'm wrong, Sister Alima, I've never heard of a practitioner of any of the African spiritual systems tell me that that in our spiritual systems you are encouraged to pray for your enemy and to forgive your enemy. You know.
Oh man. Never heard of it either, man. And they will never will. That's what people miss the boat. Any religion that said to forgive your enemies, all this nonsense, then it tells they're willing to enslave you.
Exactly.
Wholeheartedly. Because the Jews don't forget the Germans. So why have we forget these people? And what they still do today.
Absolutely, brother. So he says, consequently, both actual and potential Black business establishments and Black workers were abandoned by both white business establishments and white consumers. So then he provides us, family, with a table 24-5 and 24 and 24-5 on page 600. If you do not have the book, you can rewind, the discussion back and pause it and take a look at it. But on this chart, he lists on the first table, he provides us with a list of the top largest metropolitan cores percentage of whites. And so I'm laughing at this, Sister Lima. I'm looking at New York. That's the first one listed. In 1970, it says that New York was 75.2% white. By 1990, it says that it was 38.4% white. Los Angeles in 1970, 78.3% white. But by 1990, 37.2% white. All right, Chicago, 64.6 in 1970. By 1990, 36.3. And the list goes on. So they were getting out of there. All right. They were getting out of there. So I'm looking at table 24-5. It says ethnic shifts in cores of top 10 largest metropolises. It says minus 8 million whites. Look at that, Sister Alima. Wow. Minus 8 million whites. So they got out of there. They left. So we were fighting to integrate. And once we integrated, white folks packed up and they left.
And that's what they've done, period. Throughout history. Like, if you think about certain locations, I know I could think about, for instance, in North Carolina, where we lived, and every complex where Black people started to move in, all the white people left. I can remember the last apartment complex I was in, they said in the 90s, it was all white. But by the time I left, it was all Black.
Mm-hmm. That's a fact, sis. That's a fact. Even out here in Baltimore County, in an area called Woodlawn, in the 1970s, it was predominantly predominantly white. I actually have a picture of my brother. He was a kid at the time in the 70s, and he went to this school called Featherbed Lane Elementary School. And he was the only Black kid in his class. Baby, by the time I got to Featherbed Lane Elementary School in 1986, 1987, it was predominantly Black. White folks left. They got out of there. So anyway, on page 601 at the top, Dr. Amos Wilson says that, they organized Black consumer movements to achieve assimilationist goals, which in turn, he says, have essentially left the Black urban community bereft of a self-sufficient, self-perpetuating economic system. So we were trying to assimilate and integrate, right? And he's saying that a result of this was that we were bereft of a self-sufficient, self-perpetuating economic system. So at the bottom, he goes into Marcus Garvey and the UNIA and the Nation of Islam as Black nationalists. Can you read that for me, Sister Camille? Or one of the brothers. I keep calling on Sister Camille. Brother Chaos, Brother Impu. Do any of you brothers read?
Say something different? Is he giving us a different example? Because I swear he done the Nation of Islam and them as an example like 3 times, unless this is in reference to something different. Come on now.
He has. He keeps using Nation of Islam.
Need to read it unless he about to say something new.
No, he ain't saying nothing. Let me look. Hold on. Let me look.
I didn't see nothing.
He's just basically talking about in this paragraph how civil rights leadership, they criticized the Garvey movement and the Nation of Islam, and called them separatist movements. Missing
they the Black bourgeoisie. We know how they do.
Yeah, he said they missed the whole important opportunity to learn of and to utilize the Black movement. So he's saying that they basically mischaracterized these movements and didn't understand the ideology of these movements. So that's what he's talking about in this paragraph. But I did have this underline right here. He says, one of the means by which they are to be achieved, talking about our goals, he said, is to include the organization and redirection of the African-American and Pan-African modes of consumption. So basically, we had to change our modes of consumption if we want to achieve economic, social, and political self-sufficiency and power. So we have to basically change our modes of consumption. Let me write this down. To achieve the organization and redirection of the African American and Pan-African modes of consumption. All right, page 602, spending habits of the Black consumer. I thought that this was very eye-opening. I mean, he's talking about the spending habits of the Black consumer. These statistics are very old. Again, this book was published in 1998. But if you want to understand the spending habits of the Black consumer, download the Nielsen report. Sister Alima, panel, are you guys familiar with the Nielsen's report?
I am very familiar with the Nielsen report.
Yes, yes, yes. So that's a great report, family, if you want to understand the spending habits of the Black consumer. So I don't know, family, if you guys want to, if we want to read these are like old statistics, but he's providing us with the statistics on how much Black people spend on food, alcoholic beverages, housing, apparel and services, transportation, entertainment, personal care products and services relative to other minority groups.
No, we know it's more. Let's move on.
Yeah, and what I want to point out, sis, is the fact that they say we spend the most on apparel, entertainment, and personal care products and services.
Yeah, we know that. Exactly. Yeah, right. We gonna look good. We don't give a damn if we got $5 in the bank, sis. We gonna be flying in a motherfucker. You hear me? I'm gonna wear my Gucci with my old Gucci down, and I'm gonna borrow $20 from my homegirl for gas. But that's besides the point.
Right.
You got these sisters. I was just actually having a conversation with a young sister, 20, got a little daughter. Daughter is 8 months or 9 months, and she's out here buying, 300. She's spending $300 per bundle. So she's buying a couple of bundles of hair. She's spending $300 per bundle, right? And I'm like, well, does your daughter have a bank account, or you get what I'm saying? Like, you living with your moms, you don't have a car, but you're spending $300 or $600 on weave. We gotta prioritize, especially when you have babies. But they say we spend the most on entertainment, like you said, says personal care products and services, apparel and services, because we want to look good. Black folks gotta look good. So absolutely. So on page 604, again, he's providing us with statistics on how we spend our money relative to other groups. He's talking about how we spend, billions of dollars on footwear a year, on clothing. So he's going into all of that. Then he begins this subsection entitled "Little or No Return on the Black Dollar." So he's saying that Black people spend billions of dollars, but we don't get anything in return. We hardly get anything in return. And he provides us with this corporate return on the Black consumer dollar table 24-6. Again, you can rewind this if you don't have the book and you want to take a look at this table. I'm not going through this table, but he does list companies and what they made in 1991, the amount of sales that they made in billions of dollars, their net income, the number of employees that they have who are Black, the number of distributors that they have that are Black, office and managers who are Black, board members who are Black, okay, and their nonprofit contributions to Black and other minorities organizations. So he talks about that in here. So basically in this section, he's proven without a shadow of doubt that we don't get much for our buck, okay? So I'm at the bottom of page 606 panel, and he says, I want Sister Alima or Sister Camille, if you could read that last paragraph.
From citation?
Yes, this citation. He says, what do Black consumers get in return?
This citation points to a crucial issue. What do Black consumers get in return for their exceedingly generous, consistently loyal support of white and other Black-owned businesses? Certainly, whether measured in terms of employment, rank and file, and managerial positions, distributorships, franchises, wholesale, retail ownership, stock ownership, or philanthropy, the returns Black consumers get for supporting non-Black businesses and communities, for enriching them while impoverishing their own,
is arithmetically insignificant. The non-Black merchants who greedily pursue the Black consumer do not hesitate to show their contempt for him in any ever-expanding number of subtle and not subtle ways. That's facts. Not only do the corporations, which make billions from their trade with the Black consumers, flee the inner cities, often leading the rush, they join the rest of white America in damning those cities by withdrawing public support for their institutions, shrinking their tax bases, and by using their hegemonic political influence and enormous wealth to deflate the economic and social prospects of the consumers in cities they have jilted. Even when the major corporations remain in the central cities, the Black populations, they are forced to make various and sundry tax concessions, abatements, discounts, and the like in order to maintain access to every shrinking, insecure job opportunity they ostensibly provide. And this is very true, especially when they said that the treatment, the way that they treat Black people, you know, they typically don't even treat us good. So it's one thing, you're in our community, and then you'll talk junk to us on top of that. You know what I'm saying? And be very disrespectful.
Right.
But still, we won't boycott them though. We'll know they have a bad attitude. And literally, I've heard people say, go in here and get a Dutch from this motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, you don't even like him, but you're still in there to spend your money.
You'll still spend your money. Absolutely. I went to a store over in West Baltimore one time, and I was just driving down. It's a street called Frederick Avenue in West Baltimore, and I was riding down the street with my cousin. And we were looking at the stores, and I was just telling them, I said, I guarantee you that the vast majority of the stores in this neighborhood are owned by Arabs, either Arabs or Asians. And I said, okay, let's randomly pick a store and go in it. And that's what we did. And when we went in it, you know, we saw that it was owned by an Arab. And while I was in the store, I was talking to a brother, and he was like, you know, these are some racist motherfuckers. You know, they just racist motherfuckers. And I said, oh. I said, well, what happened? Did something happen here? And he said, yeah, you know, the guy had called one of the little Black kids in the neighborhood a nigga. I said, then why are you guys shopping here? Why didn't you shut him down? And he just kind of looked at me. You know what I mean, sis? I said, shut him down. Why didn't y'all shut him down? Why didn't you shut him down? You know what I mean? Why didn't you shut him down? So you know that this guy's in the neighborhood calling Black children niggas, and you're still here spending your money with them. Like,
why is he not in the hospital? You know what I'm saying? Like, why is his face not broken? That's the type of shit I don't understand. I don't understand that type of stuff. That's what makes me look at men, the brothers, like really funny, like really side-eye a lot of times, because like the shit that they allow, and then the excuse they'll give is, well, he didn't do anything. So it's like they look into the next man to see if the next man is going to make a move to decide if you're going to be a man or not. Like, I don't understand shit like that. And then they'll ask to tell a sister, well, what are you doing? Like, wow, seriously?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
But that's real talk.
I just feel like brothers don't protect us. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't protect us like they should. Like, they really don't. Oh, I'm not saying all brothers, you know, because there's some ignorant people listening. Not all brothers.
Right.
But I feel like in general.
Black men are consumed in individualism, individual survival. They're not group oriented like the Panthers was.
At all.
You know, if it was Huey P. Newton and he found out about it, what would happen?
You would have shut that shit down.
They would have shut it down or burned it down.
Right.
But, you know, but the thing is that Black men are consumed in materialism and individualism. That's why we're in this situation that we are.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. And there was that story where that Korean.
There he is.
Korean guy had like beat up a sister in the store.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, when I grew up.
Exactly.
That's right. Sister's telling me right though. Back in the day.
Oh, they were scared. They were scared to disrespect a Black woman back in the day.
Exactly. It wasn't gonna go down at all.
We had a Nazi bookstore. The guy, a white supremacist, put a Nazi bookstore downtown Detroit in 80. It had been about 82, 83. Put a Nazi bookstore downtown. They blew the whole bookstore out, blew up the bookstore, and books was all in the street. It was on the news that bookstore didn't last a week. That Nazi bookstore didn't last a week. They blew the bookstore up. Yep.
I miss those brothers like that.
I know.
Those are the brothers I miss.
Where them brothers at?
You know, that's not afraid to go to jail. Wasn't afraid to go to jail. These brothers, and this is no.
Nowadays, they're weak as fuck. They scared to go to jail. They don't want to get locked up.
Jail.
But sisters, carry me.
Yep.
That's that's why when they initiate this act and the end of the 60s, 69, be exact, is to demasculinize and start slowly get the black man out of that mode. Because
right.
back then, we talk about that was the whole purpose of it. So that when we look at almost 50 years now, which is now 49 years since they put that act in 69, this is what we see now as manhood today. There is none. So now you're going to see women and children get serious abuse that we haven't seen before. All the men you see that's my age or him poor age, they're going to sit back, have their cameras ready, and start recording. The only time you might see them might step up is with a white girl getting attacked.
Or if it's their family member. Other than that, they're not fucking. That's the only time I really see brothers really stand up as if they actually know that sister. Other than that, they just keep it moving.
Yeah, I remember, and you know, and I'm not going to take much time. I know we got a lot more to cover, but there was a sister, and I'm not, you know, going to reveal her name, but in Baltimore, she was raped, right? I'm talking about a warrior sister. This wasn't no pushover sister, okay? She was raped in her own neighborhood. Guy poured in the she was walking down the street. A guy poured her in the alley.
Wow.
And she was fighting the dude, you know, fighting the guy, and he overpowered her, ended up raping her in the alley. And she was telling me that she was screaming, you know, at the top of her lungs, you know, crying out for help. And she said other brothers just walked past the alley like nothing was going on. You know what I mean? And so she ended up packing up, leaving Baltimore with her husband and her daughter. They ended up moving to Virginia and living in a rural area in Virginia. Because she, you know, yeah, but the point that I'm trying to make is like, I agree with you, Sister Alima. They didn't know her and felt like, well, shit, it's not my family member. So the brothers kept it pushing. And here it is.
You know, how would you know that that's not your little cousin in the alley? You feel me? Like how you know that's not your mother? You don't know who the fuck it was. They don't know. We don't care.
Yep,
We don't care about each other enough.
Yep, walk past while this girl was getting raped. Didn't do anything. Didn't try to stop it or nothing.
Call the police and say I heard something. Nothing.
No, kept it pushing. Kept it pushing. Kept it pushing. So anyway, let's keep it pushing. Let's keep it pushing. And I haven't heard from her since she moved to Virginia. Like she straight up just withdrew. You know, I haven't heard from the sister since she moved to Virginia. But anyway, where are we, sis? He says that a review of the combined annual philanthropic contributions to Black nonprofit organizations by any of the Fortune 500 companies which do business in these or other industries very, very rarely exceed 500,000. More typically, they remain in the area between $100,000 to $200,000. So basically, for the billions of dollars of money, the billions of dollars that we spend with these Fortune 500 companies, they give us a measly $100,000 or $200,000 check. So again, Dr. Amos Wilson is making his point that we get little or no return for our Black dollars, but yet we still continue to spend. I don't have anything on page 608. Do you have anything? Anybody on the panel have anything on page 608?
Nope.
Okay. Well, one thing I thought was profound at the top of page 609. He says that he's talking about Black media, and Baba criticized Black media in one of the previous chapters. He said that Black media basically gives white-owned and operated businesses Black consumers. He was saying that they basically, you know, he said that they're reactionary, that the Black media stations, radio stations are, he called them reactionary.
I remember that.
Yeah, he said they are extremely reactionary. And then he said that they give the Black consumer market, they hand deliver the Black consumer market to white-owned and operated businesses. I was trying to think of his exact words, but it's something to that effect. But at the top of page 609, he says that one of the major functions of all Black-owned or Black-oriented media, he says it should be to repeatedly and as effectively as possible provide African-American community and consumers with vital information and statistics regarding how the corporations and industries they support with their consumer dollars are aiding and abetting or impairing their general well-being. He says that if the African-American community is to strive is consumers must be socially responsible in their spending with business establishments and must also demand social responsibility from those establishments with whom they spend. I thought that that was powerful. So at the bottom, he closes this section by saying, he ends this section by saying that the Black consumer community is that corporations increase. Another important demand that can and should be made by the Black consumer community is that corporations increase their training of Black employees at all occupational levels. Moreover, from the point of view of politically and economically empowering the African-American community, the community, Black consumers must encourage the corporations to enter an increased number of joint partnerships and joint ventures with individual, corporate, and organizational members of the community. However, the demands and relationships we speak of here are likely to be productively realized if they are made in the name and with the backing of the Black American community as the African American nation. All right. So then he goes on to talk about the Native American nations and economic empowerment. Sister Alima, can you take it from here, sis? Sister Alima? All right, Sister Camille, Native American nations, economic empowerment.
In this context, it is interesting to note the growing beneficial relations between corporations and American Indian nations and tribal confederations. For example, Fortune magazine, April 19th, 1993, described the joint establishment of an 80-acre industrial park, a gleaming shopping center, a new hospital, and a nursing home, topped off with the requisite Federal Express pickup station in Mississippi, a power plant with more than $3 million a year in sales to Pacific Power and Light in Central Oregon, the operation of an apparel company that has manufactured clothing for Nike, and which, along with other tribally owned businesses, produce revenues of around $80 million a year and employ $1,200 also in Oregon. Employ 1,200 also in Oregon. The operation of 9 enterprises by the White Mountain Apaches of Northern Arizona, which generates over $45 million in revenue, including a ski resort, timber operations, and a plant that produces insulation and other materials for McDonnell Douglas's Apache helicopter. Wow. It is interesting to read of the business acumen of Philip Martin, 67, chief of the Mississippi community. Some 5,500 members of Choctaw Indians. Through extraordinary persistence over 15 years, the Choctaws in 1979 attracted their first manufacturing business partnership for assembling wire harness for GM's Packard Electric Division. And then below, he kind of talks about the 60 million in sales from the plant that make wire harnesses and circuit boards for Ford and Chrysler, a factory built for American greeting cards, and a printing company. All of these businesses, except the joint venture, are 100% owned by the tribe, and all but the printing plant operate on tribal land. The following paragraph, Native American peoples form a number of official nations in the United States. Their nation-state status permits them certain formal possibilities not possessed by African Americans. However, above and beyond their formal or official status as nations, it has been their acting as nations, their movement based on their sense of a shared destiny, their sense of peoplehood, of nation, their openly avowed membership in a distinct ethnic community, and their willingness to act in terms of these factors that are the keys to their increasing economic success. Woo. Yeah, acting as one, understanding, your plight as a group of people, what has been stolen from you. And, we don't seem to get that.
No, we want to be inclusive.
Right, yeah. with everybody.
Yeah, we want to be
inclusive. No matter what, people that dog you out, call you all kind of names, and you still want to fight for them and go out and march with them. I'd be like, That's not our problem over there. What we doing over there?
Join their military, because I know I did at one point. Join their military, fight for them, and all kinds of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. It's incredible.
Keep going, sis. I'm getting ready to catch up with you. I'm highlighting some stuff right
now. Page 611. Further signs of economic development. Although approximately 1/3 of the nation's 2 million Indians still live in poverty. Oh, that's a high number. 1/3 of the nation's 2 million Indians still live in poverty and suffer from a number of social problems such as high unemployment, suicide, alcoholism, domestic violence, street gangs, and the like. These problems, as we have seen, are not hampering their advance toward economic empowerment. The new prosperity some Indian nations are deriving from their ownership of gambling casinos is the stuff of contemporary legend. For example, the Shakopee, Boycotts tribes Mystic Lake Casino in Prior Lake, Minnesota, netted enough earnings in 1993 to pay each of its 200 members more than $400,000. Its 1994 earnings are expected to exceed $500,000 each. Woo. The 81 casinos owned by American Indians across the nation earned combined gross revenues of approximately $567.7 million in 1992. From these revenues, they obtained a net profit of approximately $141.9 million. At this time, about 90 tribes have opened casinos, and dozens more are expected to open in the near future. Gambling profits from all reservations exceed $1 billion in 1993. These profits are now providing a pool of startup capital to diversify tribal economies and move the reservations towards self-sufficiency. They are also providing financing for new schools, housing, roads, and hospitals. Wow.
Hey, what's this?
I was just saying that there's a table on the next page. Well, not the table, but it's kind of a breakdown of the casinos and and the different tribes, what they own.
Absolutely. You're talking about the bullets at the top of 613, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just talking about the different, like you said, the different economic, I guess, investments of the different Native American. I don't keep calling them communities, but they're nations. And
right.
Choctaw. You got the Choctaw, and then you have. He says something called Indian Country today. But basically, they're opening up casinos, schools, hospitals, shopping centers. It says that they assemble wire devices for automobiles. They build houses and trailers. They it says perhaps locally with the businesses with artwork. All right.
Yes.
Artwork. It says that they've also they've made inroads in publishing and broadcasting. I know at one point, I don't know if you already said this, Sister Camille. It said that they had they were getting into the gas industry.
Right. Yes, I remember reading that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think that was very successful for them.
You said it wasn't successful for them, Sister Alima?
As far as I can tell, the Arabs are pretty much holding that industry down, them and the white folks.
Yeah, it says something about them dabbling in that. And so it says at the bottom, he says the growing economic accomplishments of the Indian nations provide many lessons for the African American community. They teach us the possibilities inherent in the cooperative ownership of productive properties and resources, as well as the possibilities inherent in acting in concert based on an ethnic identity and consciousness and on collective intent. I thought that was powerful. So the next section talks about Black tourism as an industry. And I was going to ask Brother Travis about this. Brother Travis, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, he's talking about a boycott that happened. He said a boycott that occurred in Miami. He says that this happened in 1993. Now, I was 12 at the time, okay? So he said this happened in 1993, that there was this big boycott Did we get to that yet? Hold on. Okay, I'm skipping ahead. I went to page 616. So let me hold my question, Brother Travis.
Okay.
Not there quite yet, but I was going to ask you about it. In this particular section, he's just talking about the number of organizations that convene in different cities across America. So he's saying that it is somewhat, he called it a tragic comedy to observe that Black organizations such as the National Urban League, and the NAACP, the Black Congressional Caucus, the National Association of Black Social Workers, etc., spend collectively well over $1 billion with white-owned hotels, convention halls, and caterers, while discussing the poverty and degradation of the Black American community. He says that yet organizations jointly or separately have not apparently seen fit to invest in or enter into partnership with established hotel chains, such as those entered into by Patricia McGee, that was a Native American. He says neither have they together or separately decided to buy or build hotels or convention centers and catering facilities in their most popular convention cities. So, he's saying that it's a lot of money in Black tourism. And he's saying that, look, there's a lot of organizations who convene in various cities. Why didn't you guys get together and buy a hotel, or a convention hall or caterers, right? To cater to these organizations instead of giving
all these Black people that got all this money. Like, what are y'all doing with it? Like, what are you really doing with it? All the Oprah Winfrey's and the Jay-Z's and the Beyonce's, like, no shade, right? But everybody wants to run to Africa and build shit in Africa and do this and that as if like it's not starving, poor, needy Black children right here in America. Like, I get tired of it. Everybody want to go, let's open another school in Africa. Let's do this. Let's do that. Like, we can't help Africa if we can't help ourselves. And we're not even helping don't cut me off, brother. And we're not even helping ourselves. So how exactly are we in a position to help others? And don't get me wrong, that's our people too. But at some point, we got to look out for self.
Totally agree.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if they help Black people here, then all that money that they get from white people is going to disappear. That's why they don't do it. Those people are gatekeepers.
Exactly, Queen. We know. I'm speaking hypothetical. I know.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yes. More than gatekeepers. They're there not only to serve their interests, but to really keep, like you said, a machine going. After a while, and we think about even before integration, a lot of our celebrities stayed with their communities. After that, they had to change that drastically and say, you're gonna get this money. We have to put certain things, stipulations in your contracts. You know what I'm saying? You go beyond this order, you will be cut off. And it's just some of the Black people that so seem like they're successful, they don't seem like they know how to build wealth for themselves. So if you're just getting your paycheck from them, then obviously you deserve to be cut off once you start to slip up. That's why they got always on these Negroes. Anytime they slip up, we got to put you back in your place. Right. Or a scandal, or this. That's because they already knew you at this. They wrote dossier. They keep monitor all Black progress. Yeah. Anytime they're ready to draw it in, there you go. But let's continue.
Yeah, they're financed by white capital, and then they don't have any cultural loyalty anyway. That's why they say the things they say on television and on records. So those are the people that they give money to, people that don't have any racial
that those celebrities and shit. And I'm sorry to cut your wisdom, Queen. I just feel like that, like they're liable. They should be held liable and accountable for the poison, the bullshit that they spewed out here. Like the Little John, you spewed all this negative bullshit. Fucking all that motherfucking music that he put out. Well, I call it the fight era, because his music, all we did was fight. Yep. Every time Little John music come on, either you want to twerk or you want to fight. Like, there's no in between.
Right.
So you put out all this poisonous ass music, and I'm just using him as an example. And then you go run off to Africa and open schools. And don't get me wrong, don't nobody twist my words, because I know there's ignorant people listening. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with us doing for Africa, but I'm trying to get y'all to understand these celebrities they'll poison the minds of our youth and then go help to heal the minds of others.
Yeah.
But you don't take the time to try to clean up the motherfucking mess that you made here.
Exactly.
Like Little John and all these other people. What about all these fucked up kids right here in Atlanta popping all these pills and overdosing and all this shit? Like, I haven't seen you start no initiative here, right where you're from. Nothing. But you want to run over to Africa where you can't even speak the goddamn language.
Beautiful.
Like, it don't make sense.
Beautiful.
Exactly. And toxic lyrics.
Exactly, Queen.
Like drugs. It's as bad as drugs. That imagery and the lyrics.
Worse, I think. I think it's worse.
And it's backed. We know who it's backed by. So I mean, that's a form of your destruction as well. They finance your destruction, give a few of you some money, and you think because you lack cultural and racial pride, you just throw all your people under the bus for a few trinkets. And that's who they give the money to.
Exactly.
If you're a black person with any sense, they're not financing you. Now, I'm in the music business. I know how to get down in those meetings. You know, they want the most ignorant fool they could find.
I was told that, sis, that that's what happened with Lupe Fiasco. They said that it was an album he wanted to put out, and I think he said it. He said that they told him that it was too positive, and that's why they didn't release it. He said it was too positive.
Well, you know, you got the dominant society just dictating what's hip for black people, what's black. White boys telling you what's black and what black people are going to consume. You know, it's not like, you know, when the music first got started and it was all the companies were independent, owned by blacks, and it was variety. That's why you only got this one message, and it's a way of dumbing it down too, so that they can become a part of it. Because in its pure state, when the lyrical content was like, you know, in the flows, you really had to know what you were doing, and that's in all of our music. They work to dumb it down so they can become a part of it and to take over it, and so that their children will be doing it. Their children are the ones going to school learning our music.
What do you think of David Banner?
Oh, David Banner?
Yeah, what you think of David Banner?
David Banner, because he did exactly what I'm talking about. He contributed to the bullshit. He turned his life around, and he made sure that he went back to go and clean up the minds of the people that he helped to ruin. I applaud David Banner.
Gotcha. Exactly. I've listened to a little bit of his stuff. They say Rick Ross is dying.
I thought he was sick. I don't think he's dying, brother.
I thought that I looked on. Let me get back on that. They said that he was hospitalized on. There must have been some scam type news.
He had pneumonia, but the man is not dying. My God, he's in ICU. He's not dying.
They said he was on life support. They must have
I did hear that he was on life support.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I heard he was sick. I didn't.
I'm gonna go to something legitimate. Go somewhere legitimate and see if I can find some legitimate news on him.
Right.
Yeah, that's the whole industry. It's all.
Yes. Rick Ross is hospitalized, and machine keeping him alive. TMZ, Fox News. It's another one. Rick Ross found unresponsive. That's unresponsive. Let's see here. Let me go farther into TMZ. They typically have the good scoop.
Damn.
Yeah, he's Rick Ross machine takes over for heart and lungs. Yes.
Yeah, somebody in the chat said yes, he's on life support.
Wow. Yeah.
You gotta stay healthy, you know.
That's right.
He's a big dude. I mean, you know.
He had lost a lot of weight at one time.
He been losing weight for a while.
My thing was my fault. I was going to ask Sister Lafayette. I don't know if I say your name right. You're correct, because how the hell you create the same poison to the youth?
That's right.
Raise your children opposite. Even with young Jesus, but his son just graduated college like 2 years ago, and they don't have none of their children listen to that filth. No. But they promote and put to our children, and then go off like it's nothing. There's a thing they call karma, because they know so we're not together as a collective race yet. But the way that these guys are going about men and women, including women, because women put the same garbage too, in the music.
Exactly.
That say your day will soon come, you know, and you might not expect what's going to happen, but it's coming, you know, because as a race, you can't sit there and feel comfortable and feel that you're going to just make the money and feel prosperous and talk about, say, your life is good. How your life is better when you're promoting death.
Exactly.
You came out, the community you came out, and you're not even making ends to repair it. You know what I'm saying? Really, the point is something and don't do no serious therapy to repair it. That tells you where your mind's at and that you don't give a crap. So when these white people really make the decision to cut you off, which a lot of these celebrities are being cut off as we speak every day. You hear no stories. Look at Mary J. Blige. She's in debt right now. $25 million.
$25 million.
No one's talking about that. They say, how you get that you put in the business for over 20-something years and then you have financial issues. I know why you because this is the karma we're talking about. It's more than just learning the economics. There's karma to what you do. You know? And if you only get your support from another race that promotes the destruction of our race, then this is what should be happening to you. I should not lose no sleep or have no feelings at all when these people meet their end or anything like that. Because it needs to be. Because I surely learned, let's say, if you're going to promote anything that's going to be destructive amongst your race, this is what's going to happen to you. And that's all I gotta say.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So look, let's move on. Let's move on. So I'm on 615. All right. So he already said that, look, we need to get more involved in owning conventions and convention halls, hotels, and caterers. He said as much as we convene. So at the bottom of 615, he provides us with a table. All right. People who don't have the book, rewind this back. Stop, take a look at it at your leisure. But it's table 24-4. He lists the cities that African-American meeting professionals select for many of their meetings. The source of this is dollars and cents in January 1993. It may have changed. It may not have changed. But anyway, he notes something very important. The last paragraph on page 615, he says a phenomenon which has been observed by an increasing number of Black travelers, conventioneers, and tourists is the fact that there appears to be fewer and fewer Black employees. For example, doormen, bellboys, waiters, maintenance crews in the rank and file of the hospitality industry than in the past, even when such hospitality facilities were closed to Black consumers. Thus, it appears that Black ownership, partnership, and investment in hospitality industry has not nearly kept pace, if not actually lost pace, with the burgeoning increase of Black consumer spending with the energy. So on page 616, and this is what I was going to ask you about, Brother Travis, he says Black tourism and trade in Miami. He talks about this big boycott that went on in Dade County. Did you hear about this? It says that the boycott started on July the 17th, 1990, and it ended on May 13th, 1993.
Now, the only boycott I remember in Miami is around that particular time. It might stem from that. Is when they wanted to not honor Nelson Mandela.
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about. Okay, I do remember that. The mayors and people of that particular area wasn't going to. They had critical. Those are white supremacists too. Those white Cubans, very racist. If anytime you've been in Miami and deal with the police out there, those are those white Cubans. And very racist. But yeah, they were going to boycott because I remember around that particular time, the man been in prison 27 years and they wasn't going to honor him at all. And so the people got angry because it was negative statements that was made by the mayors. I think a mayor in Miami and a few other politicians. So that kicked Black people off. They said, if you against Mandela, you against this community. So they was going to go at it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he talks about on page 616 to 617, everything that you just said. It says that the boycott was led by H.T. Smith, Miami-based criminal and civil attorney, and it says, and also Miss Marilyn Holyfields.
Okay.
That they were Black lawyers and professionals, and they boycotted them for a period of, I want to say, 3 years. And it was canceled. I'm trying to read. All participants committed themselves for 10 years. So they canceled they said it was 28 national conventions that were booked, and the conventions they canceled their cancellations amounted to approximately 50 million in lost revenues indirectly. So a lot of conventions were supposed to take place in Miami, and African American organizations canceled them, which resulted in a $50 million loss. So it says that they negotiated it. There's a boycott, which repeatedly precipitated the canceling of some 28 conventions and $50 million in losses and revenues during the 3 years it was in effect. It says, and after 18 months of negotiation, Blacks in Dade County consummated an agreement with the powers that be to pursue the following goals. It says, among the goals of the agreement are an African-American owned convention quality hotel, stepped up purchasing from African-American owned businesses, scholarships, internships, and work study opportunities for African-Americans in educational and training programs for visitor industry jobs, support for African-American financial institutions, loan and equity funds for African-American businesses, and recruitment of African-Americans for jobs in Dade's visitor industry and other business sectors. All right. So then he talks about the final call, and it says that they went on to report that this was a historic move. It says that the Miami Beach City Commission recently approved the Sheraton Suites project, a hotel that will be developed and owned by the HCF Group, a corporation led by 4 Black Miami businessmen. Says the project is designed to become the country's first hotel complex developed and owned by Blacks, and involves building a 265-room Sheraton hotel in South Beach, Miami, and renovating 2 adjacent hotels. It is estimated $37 million cost, includes $10 million in city financial incentives.
Wow.
So did they ever open it? Because they're talking about what they plan to do. Did they open it? And if so, is it still open?
Brother Travis, can you Google that for us while we move on? Because I'm with Sister Alima. I would love to know if they actually opened this Sheraton Suites.
Sheraton Suite, Miami, and Dade County?
Yep. Well, it says in South Beach, Miami.
Sheraton Suites.
Yep, Sheraton Hotel in South Beach, Miami.
Hotel, South Beach.
Supposed to be Black owned and operated.
South Beach. That's
all right, while he's looking for that family, we're going to move on to page 618. I thought this was I love this box, Sister Alima. Oh my gosh. He says the power of refusal, sis. So family, if you don't have the book again, you can rewind back and check out this box. I thought this was a very powerful box where he talks about how the power of refusal. He says the powerful rule, first of all, and Baba said this in previous chapters, that the powerful rule with the consent of the subordinate, right? So he's saying that our oppressors, the people who rule over us, to some degree, in order for them to be empowered, in order for them to rule over us, in order for them to oppress us, we have to submit, right? We have to give them our consent to a certain degree, right? It says that the powerful rule with the consent of the subordinate, consent created by ideological sleight of hand. Ultimately, the legitimacy and the exercise of power by the powerful require the cooperation and active support of the subordinate. Both behavior orientations also skillfully manipulated by the powerful to begin with. All right. So he goes on to talk about how successful non-cooperation, okay, open disobedience, militant opposition, passive resistance, the withdrawal or refusal of consent and cooperation on the part of the subordinate not only leads to a reduction or neutralization or destruction of the power exercised by the powerful, but more importantly, generate increased power, which can be exercised by the subordinate themselves to achieve their own self-defined goals. So I thought that this was very powerful, Sister Alima, because he's saying, look, in order for the powerful to rule, they get your consent to a certain degree, right? You acquiesce to a certain degree, right? So you give them their legitimacy and you give them their exercise of power, right? But he's saying if you want to take back that power and increase your power, you have to be disobedient, right? You got to be, he says, open disobedience, militant opposition, withdrawal or refusal of consent and cooperation on our parts, right? He says that this will neutralize or destroy the power exercised by the powerful and generate increased power.
It was foreclosed on, sister. It was deep. It was foreclosed.
It was foreclosed. There you go, Sister Alima.
I knew it had to have been something like that because I ain't never heard no black-owned Sheridan.
Yep, it got foreclosed.
Let me write this down. Foreclosed.
Now, I bet you white folks own Sheridan, that bitch will still be open.
They auctioned it off. They defaulted on $147 million.
Let me go to the Sheraton, girl.
Sister Alima, I can't.
I found out it was black owned and stayed away purposely. Oh Lord, they probably ain't got tissue. I'm not going there.
They didn't go.
But see, now Mandela is, I don't agree with his politics. And Mandela had an ability to unify black people after he came out, after he did that 27 years. He distanced himself with black leadership here in the United States. A lot of people don't go in on him on that. Mandela, when he got out, he even admitted that. And then, of course, that he was not going to nationalize the land of South Africa, meaning that he agreed with F.W. de Klerk to not redistribute land back to the South Africans. He came out on a white political agenda anyway.
Man, who the fuck was holding him down? I get so tired of people talking about Mandela and like, where was all the people that was holding him down while he was in prison for 27 years?
Yeah, but
all the same naysayers who got something so negative to say about him all the time.
Because
let me see one of y'all niggas go do 27 years and let's see how the fuck you come out. You go do almost 30 damn years in prison and let's see if you still come out on that revolutionary shit.
I ride with Winnie Mandela. I ride with Winnie Mandela. And we do have revolutionaries here in the United States who are still in prison longer than Mandela and still riding with black power. Sundiata, Mumia, the Move 9. Many of the former Black Panthers are members of the Black Liberation Army. They superseded 27 years and they still riding black power.
Bottom line is he put in his time. He did what he had to do. He switched it up at the end. Who gives a fuck? Whatever, who cares? But at the end of the day, he did a lot. He did a lot.
Sister Lily, you don't think that's important that you're African and you're gonna become president of a country and you don't renationalize the land to your people? That's not important.
I think a lot of things are important, brother. I also know from being a researcher of history and how shit goes. I know that it's not as simple as y'all put it. Y'all say things as if it's so easy to be done. Just give the land back to the people. It's not as easy as just you saying it. Like when treaties and documents and things have been signed, it's not that easy just to undo that shit. You can't just say, well, I'm president now. This is what it is. That's not.
Of course not. Of course not. But it's still his struggle.
That's why Mugabe had got in all that trouble fucking with the white people down there because he tried to do some boss moves, but the law wouldn't allow him to do a boss move.
Real talk. Real talk. Oh, I think my mic's not working. Shit.
Go ahead. What you say?
Can you hear me? I thought the mic stopped while ago. But,
no, Lima, are you still there?
Yeah, she's still there.
Okay. I thought because it got quiet, like.
No, doctor, she's talking, but it looked like something's acting up on her end because I see like pulsing on her mic. Like it's responding, but there's no sound.
I just talked to her. She said she's good. She's good. It's no problem. Okay. It's no problem.
Let's
so on page 619, he talks about recent travel boycotts. He says boycotts, which have cost the state and cities millions of dollars, as according to convention and visitor bureaus. And he gives a sampling of this. So, read it at your leisure. He talks about a boycott that happened in Alaska. It was an issue with animal rights. One happened in Arizona. Brother Travis, do you remember this? It says the Martin Luther King holiday, they were trying to eliminate it from Arizona, and there was this big boycott from January 1987 to November 1992.
I remember that boycott vaguely, but the issue was that those were those Republicans that were criticizing Dr. King and how it's going to. I remember that basically they were talking about how it's not irrelevant. And talking about some of them even made comments about the private life of Dr. King. They were trying. A lot of them used that white racist Republicans was using Dr. King's name in discrediting him. Talking about his private life. I remember are some of the statements that some of those people got on like the news channels. Some of those white Republicans were going in on Dr. King. You know, like they don't have private life issues.
Absolutely.
You know,
I'm with you. Who doesn't?
I remember those statements.
Think about it. Can somebody point out more than 5 African leaders that aren't sellouts? And I'll give you the rest of the night to think about it and get back with me next Sunday.
You mean from Africa itself?
Yeah.
Oh no, I can't. No, I can't.
We have a tendency to cherry pick who we call a sellout, and I'm thinking of Mandela because he stands out. But I can't think of too many of them that aren't sellouts. So when y'all can find a whole bunch of them that are not, then we can get banging on them all.
Patrice Lumumba. I will go with. Okay, I'll go with what's the brother with the Mau?
I said if you can think of more than 5. I already know the 5 that you're about to state. It's the same is. And I'm talking about overall, in history, overall, and especially right now, they all sellouts.
Well, they were putting. They
choose which sellout is the better sellout, because I think that's a fucking joke. They're all sellouts. They all are. That's why Africa's in shit right now because of their representation working.
Their leadership.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Because of their.
Let's lay off Mandela, unless we're gonna talk about all these shiftless ass Negroes. Because if we're not, then let's move on.
Mandela though was a piece of work though.
Yeah, they all are a piece of work. I advise you to do some more research.
Yeah, he was a piece of work.
All right. Well, Arizona, Martin Luther King holiday. You had
Wendy, I love.
You know what? You two tonight. So look, in Colorado, it was some gay and lesbian rights issue going on. It says in Florida, the issue was Cuban American politicians in Miami snubbed Nelson Mandela, Black conventions. Okay, so we talked about it already. Then you had something going on in Louisiana in 91 and 92. It was something going on with abortion rights. And the last issue on the list was a gay and lesbian rights issue in Ohio that lasted in November 92 to August 93, so about a year. All right, moving on to page 620, the box 24-3, economic democracy. All right, I only have a few things highlighted on this box. It says, though, that true economic development and empowerment of the African American community does not begin with the mere employment of its constituents by other ethnic communities, which own and monopolize all the vital and important means of production and wealth creation. They began and end with the economic organization of the whole of the African American community under its own auspices, direction, and financial control to create opportunity for its constituents through its self-determined commercial and trade organizations and activities. Whatever the goals the community sets for itself, even when they may require the cooperation and financial support of other groups, it must achieve through its own cooperative efforts and financial genius. All right. It says the ultimate goals of the community, in addition to the acquisition of more jobs, small business loans, and purchasing agreements, must include the establishment of genuine economic democracy in America and in the world. Not just democracy. He says economic democracy in America, in the world. It says economic democracy refers to the pluralistic ownership of the economy. So that means the economy is not monopolized. All right. It's a pluralistic ownership of the economy, its productive resources and facilities, as well as its wealth. All right. He says by pluralistic, we mean where ethnic groups own meaningful properties in the economy, or where the economy is perceived and utilized as a public trust for the benefit of all people, instead of as the property of a particular race, social class, or small group of races, ethnic groups, or classes. All right. So to me, Brother Travis, correct me if I'm wrong, is he talking about socialism here?
It sounds that way, but you know, of course, he criticized Dr. Amos Wilson early on, criticizes European socialism. You know, and in lectures he talked about, yeah, we can have socialism you know, but we have to, Dr. John Henry Clark reiterates that also, that we have to have a way in which we understand our African values and our African needs, and organize a, you know, agenda around that. But yeah, it does sound like socialism. But
yes, it sounded like when I read it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What'd you say?
I said a lot of African nations were socialist nations anyway before the year.
Correct. That's true.
All right, bet. And so at the bottom, I had the last paragraph highlighted where it says Black consumers with their leaders should no longer demand only jobs and a few franchises for their support of large corporations, but should demand significant equity in them, right? Equity owned by Black non-for-profit organizations or by for-profit Commonwealth mutual funds, which the Black community owns through its investments in them. African-American community Commonwealth funds should therefore not only invest in the economic infrastructure and development of the community, but also invest in corporate entities which profit significantly from the community, both here and across the diaspora. All right, so the next section, y'all, creating and meeting Black consumer needs. Sister Alima, you were talking about this earlier, where you were saying how we, you know, we just come up with ideas and we want to create businesses, but the businesses that many of us are creating aren't necessarily fulfilling our needs. You know what I mean? Like, remember we were talking about how like a lot of brothers and sisters, and this is no diss, but how a lot of brothers and sisters have tea or right. Or what's the other one? It says shea butter, lotion,
the jury period.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that these things aren't, you know, that we don't need it, but we have too much. We have a lot of brothers and sisters that, oh, I want to make some concoction, some shea butter, some this, some that. But we have to create businesses that will meet the needs of our people. So for example, Sister Alima, you were saying that there are no bodegas, you know, in the Black communities. Why not open up a bodega? You know what I mean? So we have to start creating businesses that will meet the needs of the Black consumers. So he's talking about that on page 621. I have the middle of the paragraph highlighted. I don't know if you guys wanted to start before then or after that, Sister Camille, Sister Alima. I'm starting right here where it says the structuring of the American business. That's what I have highlighted. Do you guys have anything?
I started the sentence above it, so that's perfect.
Oh, you started at the sentence. Okay, as we have already pointed out.
So that's good. You start there.
Okay, so Sister Camille, as a matter of fact, start reading where it says in a hierarchical fashion.
Is that on page 620?
621.
Okay, in a hierarchical fashion. Sorry, I was sending out some links. What paragraph is that?
First paragraph, in the middle of it, it says in a hierarchical fashion in the white American monopolistic control. 621 sis.
Oh, okay, I got it. I have it. In a hierarchical fashion, the white American monopolistic control of the African American market has been supplemented and in numerous instances supplanted by other ethnic groups such as Cubans, Koreans, Arabs, Indians, and so on. As we have already pointed out, these groups have joined the white business and economic establishment, excluding by various discriminatory and repressive maneuvers Black-owned businesses from the marketplace, even within the Black community itself. Yes, and that's definitely done by the Koreans that run the hair shops. You know, when Black people try to buy from the suppliers, which are Korean, they won't sell to them. Obviously, the structuring of the American business economic system along the race-based monopoly just described literally compels the Black consumer to spend the very large bulk of his dollars with non-Black businesses, even if he were of a mind not to do so. The overwhelming effect of white
right there, sis. Hold on, I want to stop you right there. That's what Sister was talking about earlier today. Exactly. He was saying how, like, you know, the way this whole economic system is structured, it's almost like you don't have a choice. Like she said, you're in the community and the supermarket, you don't have a car, you know, and the supermarket may be 10, 15, 20 miles away. and there's this convenience store down the street, you want to go to the convenience store to feed your family and to get whatever you need. So, you know, this just drives home your point, Sister Alima. This substantiates the point that you were making earlier, that the structuring of the American business economic system, he says it literally compels the Black consumer to spend their dollars with the non-Black businesses, even if they didn't want to. It's kind of like you're trapped because of the structuring of this business economic system. Right. Continue, Sister Camille. I just wanted this, you know, just point that what he's saying substantiates or corroborates what Sister Alima was talking about earlier. Please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. The overwhelming effect of white-owned media advertising, the advantageous pricing and discount and stocking policies of white businesses, the imitation of white consumer patterns and tastes by many Blacks, the identification, and to that point, it was a time when we didn't used to follow what white people said, or you know, we didn't do what they, you know, wanted us to do as far as like what they liked, and we had our own thing going.
Facts.
And
facts, that's true.
The identification of shopping in non-Black business establishments by Blacks with first-class citizenship, among other comparative advantages held by white and non-Black businesses, converged to push the Black consumer away from what few Black businesses, the presence of ethnic monopolies, as well as the relative paucity of investment capital, discouraged the entry of Black-owned businesses into the Black consumer market. The racist socio-psychological conditioning produces a feel-good, worthy experience and a sense of heightened self-esteem. When he shops in white-owned or non-Black-owned establishments, which makes him feel that somehow the white man's ice is colder, his sugar sweeter, which stokes his need to hurry the social acceptance of non-Black merchants by being acknowledged by them. Wow, a consequence of self-hatred. Smoking. And the crabs in a barrel syndrome, fearing the success of other Blacks, etc., has viciously militated against Black entrepreneurialism. The merchants, we have a graph, and I'm going to continue the paragraph. The merchants of other ethnic groups on 624, the ethnic groups can take for granted the commercial support of their own particular group. That means us, even though we spend all our money with them. The unreserved support of Black consumers and a significant proportion of other ethnic consumers. Black merchants cannot take such privileges for granted, especially the commercial support from non-Blacks. They cannot take for granted the commercial support of their own ethnic group. Thus, even when Black entrepreneurs sell the same goods at or below competitive prices, civil rights, religious, and liberal American political propaganda have succeeded. Many Black consumers feel that to support a business because it is Black-owned is a form of self-segregation, reverse discrimination, is anti-American, racist, sinful, or morally unacceptable. That is, and I get tired of arguing with people about that. Many Black consumers may feel guilty for consciously discriminating Black-owned businesses, despite the fact that all other ethnic group consumers engage in these practices vis-a-vis their own group-owned businesses relative to those owned by Blacks. Yeah, man. I mean, only people that's inclusive is us, who don't have anything.
We include everybody.
Oh man, they don't do nothing. They don't support our businesses or any of our endeavors.
And why would they need to?
Exactly. Well, that's true, but we need to learn that too. I don't understand why
we need to support each other. Not that we want to. We need to, Queen.
We need to. I don't know how we gonna survive without that, man. It's crazy.
That's a fact. Sister Camille, can you hold up the chart on page 622 and 623? I'm gonna click on your screen so brothers and sisters can see that chart.
Okay, this is the chart on 622. Can you see it?
I can see it. I can see it.
Kind of blurry.
Yeah, it is kind of blurry. I can show mine in a second. But Sister Camille, can you explain what the chart is saying?
Total number of Black persons in the workforce expected to participate in order that this economic plan is a total success. So there's a proposed plan. So weekly income level from $0 to $192 would take 132,494 Black people. Proposed minimum weekly spending of $20, yearly total individual weekly spending of $1,040.
Right.
Total yearly spending level, 137,793,760,000. Weekly proposed banking of $5. Total yearly per capital base would be 34,448,000.
Absolutely.
And it goes on. Yeah, it goes on to give different weekly income levels from 0 to 192, 193 to 288, 289 to 481, and the peak being $1,442.
I mean, this was phenomenal, Sister Camille. Like when I read this, I said, golly, Dr. Amos Wilson is really giving us this is the blueprint for Black power. You know,
exactly.
Like he's giving you a sample economic plan, right? He's saying, look, if we have 132,495 Black people spend a minimum of $20 a week with a Black-owned company, right? Black-owned business. This will, it says a yearly total individual weekly for 52 weeks, we would have spent $1,000 with these companies, right? So it says total yearly spending level would be $137 million. This is just spending $20 a week with Black-owned and operated businesses. Sister Camille,
right.
That's $20 a week. And I had to be honest, in my household, we spend more than that. Given, you know, when I don't cook and we go out, we make sure that we patronize a Black-owned and operated restaurant or carry out. So we spend more than $20 a week. But if 132,000 of us spent $20 a week, you know, with Black-owned businesses, we would generate $137 million.
Wow.
You know? So then he has another economic plan according to households, the number of Black households. And if these households spend a minimum, it says right here, a proposed minimum weekly spending of $10, you know, how much we generate. And it's saying that the households would generate $9,020 dollars. That would be yearly spending, 725 mil. If we all said, okay, let's just spend $10 a week or $20 a week with these Black-owned and operated businesses. All right. And he also talks about saving $5 a week. Look at this. Proposed weekly banking. He's saying if your income is between $0 and $192, just put up $5, you know, in the bank each week. And if your income is more, let's say that it's $1,000 a week, you know, he's saying maybe put up, you know, $51 if you can. I mean, this kind of stuff is doable. It's doable.
Right. Hey, Dr. Maat.
Yes, sir.
It was a brother, I think he was on the cow, lecture. He was saying is maybe it's conscious Black people like yourself in this panel, is that maybe it's time for us to centralize an area where, you know, the Black, you know, a conscious Black community can control, you know, those who not necessarily might not be a part of a movement, but who, if you at some point, we have to have a way in which to centralize some power. It can spread out. But what he was trying to basically say is that maybe it's an area where Black people need to concentrate as going where we can control it politically and economically and move from what you're saying. Yeah. I agree.
Basically, brother, you know what I mean? For the goals that conscious Black people have, it would have to be that way. It's not going to work when everyone spaced out across the country. That's not going to cut it.
That's
like
exactly.
You might be the only person, like literally in your whole city, who may be conscious. So how does that work for you? You know?
Exactly. That's exactly what he was saying. You know, everybody in the conscious community have wonderful ideas, but they're too spread out. He was basically saying exactly the same thing.
I agree with that, brother. I agree 200% with that, brother. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that it is time. I mean, Sister Alima and I, we talk about this all the time, how we don't on each other. You know what I'm saying? How we, a lot of us share the same, culture, ideology, and values and goals, but we don't live near each other, And so we definitely, I would love that. Another Tulsa. I say that all the time. I dream of Tulsa, and that's real talk.
And I hate that what they were saying, but it was true. A lot of our people, due to the fact of their individualism and materialism, and not organizing, it's going to die off. And he was saying they were going that way. Is that it's about getting it, what you're doing, and the companion was doing, getting with the youth and raising them up conscious. But a lot of these brothers are so gone that a lot of them is going to die off.
Yeah, they are. We don't have time to invest time and energy into people who are too far gone. That's just what it is.
That's right.
Exactly.
It was a hurtful statement that they were saying, but it's real. It's real.
Yeah, truth hurts.
Well, we have to remember too that even during the civil rights movement, the majority of Black people they didn't like him. They
That's
didn't.
right. That's right.
They didn't pay him no mind.
Nope. Right. They kept on. It was like he gonna get us in trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah, they just reaped the benefits.
Exactly.
But they didn't. Many. The majority did not participate.
Did not. Exactly, Queen. And that's how it usually is if we're going to be realistic. And also, there's never been a time in history where all one race has been united. That's all races. There's never been. That will never happen.
That's right.
I agree with that, Sister Alima.
I got this imaginary thought that for some reason because I hear it a lot. We're never going to get any further until we unite. I'm just curious, who the fuck are you talking about? All the 40 million Black people here? Are you realistic, or are you trying to have a pipe dream? Because no one race has all been united. That's just dumb as hell. I don't know why people keep saying that. The conscious community is thriving, and they interact with each other all the time. Just focus on that. Stop trying to save.
Trying to save people that don't want to save.
Exactly. I don't fuck with. I don't do that. I don't got time.
And I think the best place is Atlanta. I really do.
I agree, brother. I really agree. I got to agree with you here, brother. It's a lot. It's already a start. There's so many Black-owned businesses here. Hush, Impu. There's so many Black-owned businesses here. That's the only reason I say that, because it's already pretty established,
Right. That's right.
It's very established already, as opposed to trying to go somewhere else. But at the same time, Atlanta is it doesn't have a lot of suburbs. Right. So it does not really conducive to, land. There's not a lot of available land.
Well, in Georgia?
No, I know there is in Georgia, but in Atlanta, no.
Built up.
No. Yeah. Georgia, of course.
Okay. Yeah, man. It'd be a time where most people have to consolidate, and you're not gonna get 100% on it.
That's right.
But once you see some people start seeing something good going, it's gonna catch on, and eventually people are gonna follow. Just like oh, somebody say something.
Oh, no, go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
I say it. It's been consistent throughout the times where our people that we like to be followers, and on the average, if they see some really good going. Hell, look at this movie Black Panther. It's them we talk about even right now. That some people say is good. Everybody go support and watch it. You know what I'm saying? They don't know why, but they go do it anyway because they find a few people find it's good, and they start go with it.
Yeah, the bandwagon effect.
There you go, and that's the most. To me, that's the most detrimental effect. When you have
because it can be good or bad. You never know which way it's going to swing.
Right.
Right.
Right. I agree with that. All right. So moving on, he says that at the bottom, it says that the Black consumer is not a white consumer who happens to be Black. The Black consumer exhibit different spending patterns. I keep saying patterns. It's patterns. Spending more or less variety. That's that accent coming out. Patterns. It's patterns.
My mama says that too. Patterns.
Yeah, patterns.
That's idea.
Yeah.
On that word.
Yeah, it's just patterns. Spending more or less products and services than white consumers. Black consumer tastes differ from those of whites on a number of dimensions. They react differently to advertising campaigns. He goes on to say that the journal reports that African Americans have more money to spend and are far more avid shoppers and far less brand loyal and more receptive to advertising than most marketers realize. This has changed. Now, again, remember this book was published in 1998. Okay. I read in a Nielsen's report that we are the most loyal to brands. So in 98, he was saying that, you know, we have more money to spend and we're far more avid shoppers. And it says that we were far less brand loyal back then. But Nielsen's reports says that today that we are really one of the most loyal folks to brand.
That's
that,
fact.
You know, and I gotta say that, you know, very loyal. Like I grew up with Tide in my house. And so for me to turn around and say, all right, let me try this. You know, it wasn't major because I understood the importance of supporting Black owned and operated businesses. But, you know, I had to break brand loyalty, you know, and buying Black requires you to break brand loyalty. Like I'm used to Scott, I'm used to Bounty. You know, these were the products that my mom bought, you know, when I was growing up as a little girl. Bounty and Scott toilet paper and Tide laundry detergent. And so, you know, when it was this whole shift and I decided to now, you know, purchase items by Black owned and operated businesses, I had to break my brand loyalty. And so anyway, we are one of the most loyal people to brands. So this has definitely changed. And I wanted to point that out. But moving on, it says the politics of Black consumer taste. He says that the Black consumer taste and habits are not monolithic or unchanging in that they reflect reactions to current fashions, trends, fads, and the like. It is pertinent in this context to note that these tastes and habits also reflect current states of political consciousness and stages of political social development. So he's going into how, you know, in the 90s, there was this big push for Black nationalists, Black pride, and Afrocentric movements during the 90s, and how a lot of businesses capitalized off of Black consciousness and African consciousness during that period of time. So on page 626, he's going into the economics of Afrocentrism, and he's given us a lot of examples on how these companies started changing their products, you know, to accommodate this new taste for Afrocentric products. Okay, so he says, for example, there was a McDonald's in Harlem, and it says that what they did, what the regional managers decided to do, was to adorn the store in kente cloth and African American art. And they saw that their sales shot up once they did that. So when I read this, I said, God damn it. I said, never mind the fact that that McDonald's is serving your children poison, all the processed foods and all that crap. Just because you saw the kente cloth and the African American art, you went in, right? And they said that their strategy worked. They said that their revenue went up 35% or 40% once they adorned the building in kente cloth and African American art. He also talks about how KFC, how they changed their uniforms. It says from vest, ties, and hats. It says that they swapped KFC traditional uniforms for vest, ties, and hats made in kente cloth. And they also adjusted their menu and added collard greens, red beans and rice, and sweet potato pie to the menu, and their sales shot through the roof.
Wow.
On page 27, he talks about different hair care, different cosmetic companies that said, hey, these Black folks are spending $600 million to $1 billion. I want some of that. So what they started doing was creating like makeup and hair care products for Black women. So it says right here at the bottom, it says a study dispels myths of hair care products. It says that a study showed that Black consumers had assumed that brands such as African Pride, TCB, Dark and Lovely, Let's Jam, Right On Curl, and Bone Straight were manufactured by African American companies. I know that growing up, I surely did. I thought it was. I didn't know. I used to get Dark and Lovely perms and all that in my hair as a kid. And I did think that they were brands that were owned by African American people.
Yes, my mama always said white people rule the world, so I just assumed. I assumed that shit was white on too. I'm like, man, it's just niggas. Like,
I didn't, sis. You know, I remember the Dark and Lovely boxes. Remember they always had a dark skinned sister on the box.
Bastard used to love some Dark and Lovely.
Yeah, so I used to use that in the old Sheen. Remember the old Sheen?
Oh yes, queen.
Remember that. And
Yeah, that's another.
Yeah.
So it says right here that 79% of African American consumers thought that, that we thought that it was owned by us, and it wasn't. And it says that 77% of the consumers said that if they knew which brands were African American, they would show a preference in purchasing these brands. All right. At the bottom, he says, obviously, there is gold not only in African soil, but also in African styles and tastes. Moreover, entrepreneurs, it says, have made startling discovery that there is gold in the words African, Africa, and Black nationalist colors, red, black, and green. So I remember going to the corner store family around my grandmother's, where she used to live over in East Baltimore. And the Chinese people, they were selling, remember the leather patches that had like Africa in the middle? It was like a medallion about this big. I mean, they were selling that. They were selling, all products that said African in it and all sorts of stuff. And when I read this statement, I thought about Nike and how Nike just released for Black History Month a pair of shoes with the red, black, and green on the so, they were trying to capitalize off of Black consciousness and African consciousness, back in the 90s, and it came like full circle. Like they're doing it today. Nothing has changed. So anyway, he goes on to talk about Cuba cloth and how there was a place in Brooklyn, New York, that made a lot of money selling Cuba cloth. He goes on to international trade and taste. This is on page 629. I'm looking at international trade and taste. Sister Camille, can you read that for me, sis? That first paragraph, first paragraph, actually.
On 627?
629, sis.
Wait, I'm sorry. I was sending out links. International trade and local taste. The economic ascendance of homeland fashions of New York City richly illustrates the fact that trade follows the path of taste. The stimulation of taste lays the foundation for initiating and sustaining the entrepreneurial means for satisfying it. Changes in consumer taste presage changes in economic production and trade, as well as possible changes in trade relations and organization and in the redistribution of wealth. The European taste for sugar, molasses, and rum, and for clothes made of cotton rewrote the economic history and map of the world. European wealth, power, and monopolistic trade relations, in contrast with African poverty, powerlessness, and dependent trade relations, are to a significant degree founded on the ability of Europeans to discover and or socially engineer African consumer tastes and their ability to engineer the trade relations by which those tastes are satisfied. This discovery and production of desire are the pillars of local, national, and international trade. And trade, needless to say, whether local, national, or international, is a major source of power and wealth. Our central contention in this section is that the discovery and or social engineering of African tastes by Africans themselves can lay the economic foundations for the construction of African wealth and power. If Africans also engineer the trade relations by which those tastes are satiated, this is the fundamental challenge for African consumers and entrepreneurs across the African diaspora. For upon the rock of profitable African trade relations with other Africans will be built African trade peoples.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a very powerful statement. And then he goes on to talk about how there was a guy from Senegal. His name is, he opened up a company in New York called Homeland Fashions. And they said that he was importing textiles from Senegal and Ghana and made over 300 Afrocentric items. And he became very wealthy for doing so. He goes on to talk about how he talks about Senegalese tourists and international trade and how they have the Senegal Gorée Island, which has become like a big tourist site. They said that a lot of African Americans travel over there and buy different merchandise from the people over there. On page 631, he goes on to talk about how this vendor, the Senegalese vendor, Jope, and other Senegalese vendors, how they take a lot of their revenue and they put it into this Senegalese bank located in New York, and how they transferred over $4 million. It says in September of 1994, they transferred over $4 million to Africa. All right. And he says that a major source of sales for African vendors, particularly Senegals, is African-centered cultural events. So he's saying during these cultural events that they have, he's saying that these vendors will travel, across the United States in cars and minivans. He says toting bags to dozens of Black-oriented craft shows, jazz festivals, or African pride events. He's saying that they make a lot of money from doing so. Again, making money off of Afrocentrism. All right. So at the bottom, he says that African Americans and Africans abroad can vastly and mutually enrich each other through the African-centered international trade of not only African arts, crafts, and other cultural paraphernalia, but also in continental African or African American originated manufactures, goods, and services, from the simple to the complex, from low tech to high tech. All right, page 632. There's JCPenney's African boutique. So even JCPenney saw the rise in Black consciousness, or the rise in African consciousness, and said, wait a minute, we need to figure out how we can capitalize on this as well. And so in this particular section, Dr. Amos Wilson is talking about how JCPenney, how they were going to open up 20 boutiques in their stores called Authentic African Boutiques. Okay, and they wanted to expand about it. We're going to start with 20, and they wanted to expand into about 350 stores. But later on, they and they said that they made a lot of money. It was definitely profitable, but they said that they couldn't keep up with the demand. Like, they could not continue to supply, the quality at a certain level, in order to keep up with the demand. So they end up letting the boutiques go. But anyway, it says that they continue to promote Afrocentric products through their JCPenney catalog. On page 633, he goes on to talk about Montgomery Ward. I haven't seen Montgomery Ward in God knows when, but I have seen when I was a kid. When he named Montgomery Ward, I said, oh my God, he took it back to the 1980s. But Montgomery Ward, it said that they announced that they were going to launch 30 in-store boutiques offering African styles and furnishings. There was a catalog that used to circulate called E-Style Catalog, which targeted readers of Johnson's publishing company's Ebony magazine. Okay, and E-Style Catalog, I'm wondering, what was this catalog? What was it about? Oh, okay, so it was a female. It says the merchandiser for the E-Style catalog, they said, is Lori Scott from Bronx, New York. And she said that, when she was growing up, she could tell that clothing companies were not designing clothes with Black women in mind. It says that her father was a tailor, and he often altered the clothes she brought. So she came up with this E-Style catalog, showing Black women, in stylish clothes and fashion forward designs, accessories, Black colors, and etc. He goes on to talk about Essence and Essence magazine, how they introduced a major department store called Essence Pantyhose. I remember this, Sister Alima. Do you remember Essence Pantyhose?
I do, vaguely.
Yeah, I remember as a little girl, when my mom would send me to the store to get pantyhoses, like a set of pantyhose for church. And if I ripped it during church, I used to run to this corner store and get it. But Essence Pantyhose, and it says, they featured narrow knitted ankles, full of hips, and a choice of color tones. So he says, not to be outdone in cashing in on the large market for clothes suited to the taste of African-American women, as well as their increasing appetite to dress in African apparel, you had the McCall pattern. All right. So they had these African-centered designs. Then he goes on to talk about African dolls and how, there were, it was a person by the name of Eli Eason who started a company called Omet Corp in New York City. And it says that she started the company, to produce African dolls because she said she couldn't find a Black superhero doll for her son. So she saw a need and she filled it. And then after that, a lot of other companies began to manufacture Black dolls. And I remember that was a big thing back in the 90s. But I remember when I went to Toys R Us they released a black Barbie. Do you remember that, Sister Alima? This was like in the 90s, because prior to that, all Barbies were.
I remember the baby headstand. Remember she came out?
Yep.
Headstand. It was like a big deal because she was black. Because like they had similar ones, but she was always white.
Yep, exactly. So they said that once this sister, started a company producing black dolls, it said that a lot of white firms, once they saw her success, they said, wait a minute, let's start producing, black dolls or African dolls. And they wanted to, of course, capitalize off of it. So anyway, on 635, Dr. Amos Wilson goes on to talk about the toys and games industry and how, America spends, it says, some $17 billion on toys. He provides us with a table on the breakdown of kids under the age of 14. Again, this was around 1998, but around 1998. But look, I'm looking at this chart, Sister Alima, and interestingly, you see that the number of white children declined from 1998 to 2010. Mm-hmm. So I think that the Bible must have inserted this table because it has 2010, and the book was published in 1998.
Right.
Yeah, so he must have inserted this table. But anyway, so it talks about the amount of money that we spend on toys. He goes on to talk about in the next section. It says African American entrepreneurs and Africans in marketing. African American entrepreneurs also play with toys. All right, so he's talking about these different Black owned and operated companies who have created Afrocentric based toys and games, i.e. toys and games based on African ethnicity, culture, and experiences. One in particular, it says one particular success story was Jacob R. Miles. It says that Jacob R. Miles started a company called Cultural Exchange Corp. All right. And he started that company with the intent to design and market a line of playthings largely aimed at minority groups. All right. So he capitalized off of it and made, a few $1 million. All right. At the bottom of page 636, Dr. Amos Wilson says, it must be kept in mind that the entrepreneurial activity of African-American business persons need not be necessarily restricted to the manufacture and sales of Afrocentric products only. These activities are of the utmost importance. He says African-centered production and sales may serve as powerful platforms for thrusting African-American entrepreneurs into the general national and international marketplaces, producing for and selling to cross-cultural markets. So he's saying, and look, this is a great market. Producing African-centered products is a great market. And he said that it's definitely needed. However, we don't need to stay stuck. We don't need to just exist only in that market. He's saying we can use these markets, use the sales, right, to serve as powerful platforms for thrusting us into general national and international marketplaces, producing for and selling to cross-cultural markets. So we don't have to stay stuck there. All right.
You're right, Dr. Maya. And you hit on a significant point of the 80s and 90s. Everybody was selling incense and shea butter. Yep. You were exactly right.
That's still like that.
Yeah. You go to the events and be like 1 million people wait.
Oh, well, no, they got fancy on it. Now they got moon butter.
He said they still doing it. Still doing it.
Yeah,
but that's sad, man. That's sad. We got to progress. But you know what I love? The fact that now we have our tennis shoes, we have films, we have toothbrushes, we have laundry detergent, toilet paper, paper towels. I just ordered Tubman batteries. So we have a Black owned and operated company who produces batteries. And I just purchased my first pack like a few days ago. So next week, when we meet for our book club, I'll be holding up Tubman batteries. But so I love the fact that we are I see us kind of expanding, into delving into other markets. And we just have to continue to expand. I would love to see us, and I say this all the time, I would love to see, and I graduated, I'm an engineer. That's what I do. That's my field of expertise. But I was telling brothers and sisters at the School of Engineering at Morgan State that I would love for us to come up with our own cell phone companies, design our own, manufacture our own cell phones. Get a tower, start our own, But anyway, so we definitely need to. I love the fact that we're expanding, but we definitely need to expand.
I would like that too.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely had to continue to expand. He provides us with another example. Bill Coat of Beck Enterprises produced a two-wheel drive bicycle called Deuce. And so he's talking about other places that other enterprises that we delved into. So yes, we had the African Center thing going on, but he's saying, look, you guys can do other things. For example, you have Bill Coat of Beck Enterprises. He produced the bike. We have Lonnie Johnson of Atlanta, who was the inventor of the Super Soaker. And by the way, I had a Super Soaker back in the day.
I remember that. He was an engineer too, wasn't he? I think he was an engineer also.
Oh, I think he was an engineer.
Uh-huh. So was the black guy who created the original Moonwalker shoes.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that.
There were some shoes. Okay, you know those shoes? They're not the Moonwalker shoes. You know those shoes that Michael Jackson wore? And he was like leaning forward and like it looked like he was about to fall over, but he didn't fall. Yeah. So those are a particular pair of shoes that he had on. And that was patented by my brother. He's an engineer.
Didn't know that. Didn't know that. Wow. I remember looking at the video. Was that was that Eddie? Is he okay?
Smooth Criminal? Yes, Smooth Criminal.
Yes. And I remember I tried to do it in my living room and fell.
I know when
I tried to imitate Michael Jackson and fell flat on my face trying to imitate Michael Jackson. But anyway, he also talks about Just Us Books, which was a publishing company by a husband and wife, Wade and Cheryl Hudson. Says that they were unable to find African-American images to decorate their child's, their daughter's nursery. And so it says that Cheryl, she was an art editor at the time, she created, letters featuring the faces of African-American children and drew her child's name, with what she calls Afrobets on the wall. And that led to them producing a children's book series called Afrobets. And they were very successful. It says that they, in their first year or whatever, they grossed a few $1 million. And I think it says that they invested like $7,000 of their savings to start it. And, and they said, it says in 1994, they expect to net well over $2 million. So they made money that way. And then you have at the bottom of page 638, Afrocentric weddings means business. So a lot of people made a lot of money. And I'm talking about brothers and sisters off of Afrocentric weddings. Sister Camille, at the bottom, can you read where it says a variety of African enslaved tradition? Oh, no, just read that. Just read that paragraph, sis.
Okay, African wedding means business.
Yes.
This latter, African weddings mean business. The social political influence of Afrocentric movements on the economic behavior of Black Americans is most graphically demonstrated by the increasing use of African traditions in wedding ceremonies and by the creation of companies which cater to them. In spite of loud laments about the disappearance of the Black family, it is estimated that African-American couples are spending some $3.2 billion annually on their weddings. The wedding industry as a whole is estimated to generate $32 billion yearly. Wedding couples may ceremonial dress with touches of kente cloth here and there, or they may dress in full African-style regalia, complemented by drummers to announce the bride, dancers to entertain, and the throwing of kernels of corn as a wish for fertility. A variety of African slave traditions may be utilized to celebrate and consummate the wedding, including ancient rites performed by the Yoruba priestesses, the exchanging of wedding bands engraved with mejuneta, the cutting and eating of Caribbean black cakes, and jumping the broom. This latter activity requires that the avowed couple leap over a broom lying on the ground as a symbolic of their leaping into matrimony. The broom has traditionally been used as a symbol of the home in parts of Africa and during the enslavement period in America. Jumping the broom legitimated the marriage of a couple in the eyes of the slave community in lieu of the fact that initially slaves were generally not allowed to legally marry by the slave-holding white community. In the typical American commercial tradition, a social trend both stimulates an industry and or is reciprocally stimulated by it. Contrary to the tendency we have been discussing, where fledgling Afrocentric trends are rapidly catered to by white-owned businesses, after they're having watched pioneering Black-owned businesses create and establish the market, yes, and preempting them soon thereafter. The African-centered wedding tradition is so far engendering a rapidly growing Black-owned and controlled business sector. A popular guide to the broom jumping ceremony is Danita Green's 1992 primer, Broom Jumping, A Celebration of Love. Danita Green also publishes a newsletter, Broom Lady, to advertise African-centered bridal services. Brides Today magazine, a bi-monthly which began publishing in 1991, already has more than 125,000 subscribers. Kuumba Collectives, a greeting card company, sells custom designed wedding invitations, programs, and thank you cards featuring various African motifs, including kente cloth borders, African silhouettes, and hieroglyphic symbols. Other popular guides to African-centered weddings and services are being published in increasing numbers, and catering service such as wedding coordinator Metsa Mitchell's Always and Forever Wedding Chapel in Detroit, which offer a variety of the African-centric goods and services, are a growing phenomenon.
Wow. Yeah, finish that last one, sis, that last paragraph.
There is evidence that an increasing number of Black entrepreneurs are beginning to respond to Black consumer changes in taste and to meet the culturally sensitized Black consumer more halfway. It is often not remembered that business and success in business are to a significant extent culturally determined. Those businesses that create or detect and respond to enculturated needs and desires are more likely to succeed than are businesses which do not.
And that's a fact. And I see why Baba Amos Wilson ended with that powerful statement before he mentioned cross colors. All right, colors for African people. Right. He says that, you know, and I thought that was a very powerful. I actually have that underlined on in my book. You know, that it is often not remembered that business and success in business are to an extent, a significant extent, culturally determined. Those businesses that create or detect and respond to encultured needs and desires are more likely to succeed than are businesses which do not. Again, I want to go back to the 90s when there was this big rise in Black consciousness, African consciousness, right? And so we saw that, you know, it was like a cultural movement going on back then. And so, you know, you had people like it says Carl Jones and Thomas Walker, they were the owners of Cross Colors back in the day. And I remember Cross Colors. I remember having my little jacket with my green and my yellow and my red on. But it says that Cross Colors, you know, Cross Colors, it says, which makes a line of hip hop clothing that mainstream merchants are clamoring for. It says Mr. Jones, an apparel designer who grew up in Watts, wanted to make clothes infused with Black urban attitude and African accents that would appeal to resurgent Black pride. And he did just that. It says that he participated in their first trade fair, and they had $5 million. They generated $5 million in orders. All right. And it says that Cross Colors sales rocketed to $89 million in 1992.
Right.
That was an ugly ass clothing line too.
Hey, and I know I love it because you couldn't tell me nothing. You couldn't tell me
ugly as hell in them clothes. I know.
That was a wonderful time, though. Those 90s, though. The 80s and 90s was a wonderful time.
I missed the 90s.
Oh man, everybody was alive. Joseph and Yakanan was raising hell like I don't know what in the 90s. Oh, you should have saw him in a lecture. He was raising hell. John Henry Clark. You know, most people don't know that John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben used to get into it. And
they always got into it.
Yeah, they love one another, but they used to get into it. You had you had Booker T. Coleman. You had all of those heavyweights out there during that particular time. Everybody was. Bobby Rush.
Wow, yeah.
What's his name? Bobby Wright. Bobby Wright. That's what I mean. Bobby Wright. He was alive then. It was a powerful time then. I had just ran into Dr. Amos Wilson. He was a young cat because who brought him out was him and Marimba Ani was Dr. John Henry Clark.
Wow.
He was the one who brought them out because, well, you know, of course, Marimba Nee worked under John Henry Clark at Herner College. Yeah, Marimba Nee.
Brother, how old are you?
I'm up there.
I love it.
Amos Wilson. I'm like, how old is this man?
You say he called what? You say he called what?
Brother.
A young book.
Yeah. Bob. Well, he was just coming out. I think he just had got his bookstore because Marimba Nee used to teach a after school program at his bookstore. And so Marimba Nee and Marimba Nee and you know, Dr. Amos Wilson worked together close together, and John Henry Clark brought them both out. And you know, Marimba Nee was, you know, everybody was in love with Marimba Nee. You know, she wore the African clothes, wore the locks. All the brothers had a crush on her. Yeah. Yes, indeed. That was a powerful time. Powerful time.
What page are you on?
640, the bottom. I don't even think that we need to read the tribute to Cross Colors.
Please.
He's basically talking about, you know, how they got started, the amount of money that they invested, the amount of revenue and sales that they garnered. I don't think it's any need to talk about that. And he talks about that from page 640. He talks about Cross Colors on page 640 to page 642.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, because I left the slave culture early. I'm 51. I was in the slave culture early. Yeah.
Right. So then at the bottom he mentions Carl Kanai. Do you guys remember that clothing label back in the day, Carl Kanai?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember Carl Kanai. Yeah, I remember him.
So why did he say it failed? It says one man's failure, another man's success. We often learn from Carl Kanai is one of the persons who seem to have learned good lessons from the mistakes of others. Oh yeah, okay. So Kanai had developed his own celebrating. He did. He started a fashion line.
What about
I remember a lot of brothers used to.
Do y'all know him?
Yeah.
Famous Amos. Yeah, the cookies.
Yeah, the cookies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I do remember Famous Amos.
in high school.
Yeah, he became a playboy and he let that company go under. Yeah.
Yeah, me.
Yeah, he sold out. He sold it out. He sold out to, I think, the Asians. The Asians got his to the Koreans.
Boo.
Yeah,
right. Boo.
The cookie's still around. The cookie's still around because I see them at the stores all the time.
Cookies if they ain't black on no more.
Yeah. That's
why they taste right no more. You know, shit don't taste right when it's not black on.
You put some more weird ingredients up in there.
Yeah, they get cheap on you.
No doubt. So he goes on to talk about Carl Kanai, that brand, and how they made a lot of money. He said Kanai, who claims to own 100% of his company, projects that he will generate first year sales of $40 million. In fact, it says sales were $43 million the first year. It says that his company jumped from obscurity to number 38 on the Black Enterprise Industrial Service 100 list of June 1995 and to 28 in 1997 with sales of $65 million. Based in Los Angeles, Kanai also has showrooms in New York. It says born in Flatbush, Brooklyn, Kanai maintains his roots with bi-monthly visits. Infinity employs 28 people and has embarked on a diversified product line. All right, so that's what's up. So the next section, it says the economics of cultural and subcultural identity. Somebody take it from there.
And summarize it because I'm falling asleep.
Yeah, let's go. I sent you a text message, Sister Lima.
All right, sis, just do it, sis. Just summarize it so we can move on.
Yeah, y'all go ahead and summarize. I think I'm out of fuel. Go ahead, Sister Lima. Somebody. Sister Lima, Sister Camille.
Oh, with the economics of cultural and subcultural identity.
Yeah, sum it up for us, because we tired.
Woo!
Just summary in sum.
Man, I didn't even read that page yet. Basically, cultural identity and its subcultural varieties are not merely social statements or forms of personal and group self-definition. They also define and determine economic behavior. Two newly Black-owned business establishments illustrate this point quite clearly. Both happen to use the term homeboy as either a company name or a brand name. So basically, they're taking, speaking about, you know, the terminology and things that we use in the neighborhood and as people and marketing those things, and you know, selling them and making a product. Under the banner headline Homeboys Incorporated, chips in to help inner city teenagers. On page 644, sorry, I jumped over there. For Homeboys Inc., fledgling Philadelphia company, success is marketing potato chips with a social message. Homeboys.
I remember that. I remember those homeboy potato chips in the oh my gosh, in the stores in the urban communities. I remember that.
Yeah, DC. I remember that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, after just 1 year on the market, sales last year, which is back in 1990, reached 4 million. Mr. Ridgely says, and the company is profitable. Homeboys chips now are sold from Boston to Texas in mom and pop stores and supermarkets such as Superfresh and Acme.
Wow.
Right, but it says here, but good intentions aren't enough, experts warn. At Homeboys, the company's social goals are backed by street smart marketing. A 1 ounce bag of chips retails for 25 cents. Dang! Affordable for most teenagers, and to appeal to urban youth. Homeboys uses slang from the streets to create the names and flavors for its chips.
I remember
that.
Like
being in touch, you know, what's keeping your fingertips on the trends, and you know what's going on with the youth is also a way of selling and coming up with a product and marketing a product. On 645, the neighborhood's ills. Homeboy employs 17 people and has hired several young men from the neighborhoods of West Philadelphia. We all have had either a family member or friend for a victim to the ills of our neighborhood, says Farouk Abdul Ghaffar, director of sales. I saw the opportunity to be part of something positive and at the same time make money. Mr. Abdul Ghaffar, a former school teacher, takes the company's message to school. Mr. Mohammed, the company's vice president, says that in some respects, we are substitutes for parental guidance because we relay traditional family values to the children. So also as a business person, you have to be socially conscious and love your community as well. You know, you want to take your message and your expertise and know-how to the people that need it the most, and instead of exploiting them just for their money.
I got a quick question. So this Homeboy company, this wasn't Black owned and operated, or it was?
It was. Maybe they're Muslims. Jerry Wrigley.
Like Muslims to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
partner Samir. His partner was Samir Mohammed. So they were Muslims.
Okay. Cool. And it says that it goes on to say that they also had Homeboy soda. I don't remember Homeboy soda, but I do remember the chip.
Yeah.
I remember this. There's a actually just found out here in Atlanta, there's some chips that's Black owned, and it's got like pictures of different rappers on them. Like it blew me away. It was kind of dope. They had like some Cheetos, some cheddar sour cream, and it had like one of the Migos on it. Then I saw salt and vinegar. They had Future on it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yep, like that was creative actually.
Yeah.
Like creative. That was
Black
creative.
people are very creative people. Very.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So it says that they had Homeboy soda. Can we just peruse this and find out how much Homeboy soda, the number of sales it generated? I'm looking.
30%. It sold at 25 cents. Yeah, it doesn't say.
Oh, it doesn't say. Okay, I was just wondering how successful, how profitable the Homeboy soda was in comparison to the Homeboy potato chips. So even moving on, it says food from the hood greens into gold. Says the hip hop generation is more than a soda pop junk food outlet for hip adult entrepreneurs. Says this generation has some entrepreneurial objectives of its own. One set of hip hop entrepreneurs includes 39 predominantly Black and Latino students from Crenshaw High. These teens sport all emblems of hip hop: Dom baggy, low riding jeans, expensive sneakers, earrings, lengthy t-shirts, and caps perched jauntily on their heads. They hail from South Central Los Angeles. These teenagers, while as fun-loving as any, are serious about business. It says, in fact, they are taking care of business as the owners of Food from the Hood, a produce and a produce and salad dressing company located in South Central LA. So he's talking about the New York Times. So it says students turn greens into gold. So these were students who called themselves hip hop entrepreneurs. Carlos Lopez, who was 15, said he was one of the 39 students from Crenshaw High School who, after the riots 2 years ago, turned an overgrown corner behind the school's football field into a garden and formed Food from the Hood to sell the vegetables and herbs they grew. That was wonderful.
Wow.
That was wonderful. That was wonderful. All right, so it goes on to talk about them. It says last month the company introduced Straight Out of the Garden, a creamy Italian dressing. It says in this promotional material that the students wrote, the dressing is said to have a kicking taste and bumping packaging. The dressing is already in 2,000 stores, primarily in Southern California. It will be available nationwide within the next 3 months. It says more than 50,000 bottles of Straight Out of the Garden have been sold, and the profits will go into college scholarship fund for the 39 owners. That was beautiful.
Wow.
That was absolutely beautiful. It says that hip hop owners of Food from the Hood did not come unprepared to accomplish their mission. They were taught basic business skills, financed by a grant of $49,000 from the state of California's Riot Recovery Fund. It says that the Rebuild LA Fund contributed $50,000, which was used to build the company's office and develop its salad dressing. All right, so that was wonderful. So it says that from this Food from the Hood is an excellent illustration of the kind of productive activity the African American community can provide for its restless youth population if it decides to take care of business. The founding of this company also provides a good case in point of how crisis and adversity can be transformed into productive opportunities by persons and communities who possess the appropriate consciousness, self-confidence, creativity, and persistence, and who are motivated to do for self. So now he's getting into Sylvia's restaurant. Every time I go, and I see folks are falling off of the YouTube. They're falling off, but I want them to understand, man, Sister Alima, we don't just read the blueprint for Black Power. We study the blueprint for Black Power, and we apply the blueprint for Black Power, and that takes time. This was a very, very lengthy chapter. The chapter was 70 pages, and we're trying to comb through this book. We have like 200 pages left to read in this book, and so Sister Alima and the other panel members were like, look, we need to finish out this chapter. And that's what we intend to do today. So bear with us, family. We have about 7 more pages to summarize. All right. And then I'll let you go. And I think 7 more pages, 5 pages of text. And he provides us with 2 pages of charts. No, it's not even 5, it's 6. 6 pages, 2 charts. So about 4 pages of text that we need to summarize. So I'll be brief. He talks about Sylvia's restaurant, which is a Black owned and operated restaurant right in Harlem. It's located on Harlem's Malcolm X Boulevard between 126th and 127th Street. Each time I go to New York to talk to Sinetta, I go over to Sylvia's restaurant. I love the food.
I think they send everybody to Sylvia's.
You said they send everybody over there, sis?
Yeah, too. I think that's where they send everybody. Go to Sylvia's.
Yeah. That food was I get the salmon crochets.
Croquettes.
Yes.
I love it. That's what I get each time I go to Sylvia's restaurant. So he's talking about Sylvia's restaurant, and I'm wondering if he it says despite the service to people like Jesse Jackson, it says the mayor, Sylvia's is still a community-based business. All right, so talks about Sylvia's. He doesn't give me any numbers. He says that it was founded in 1992. Sylvia's Food Products and Company Incorporated entered the mass market through supermarkets and community stores. Okay, so not only do they have a restaurant, it says that they went on to, says more to the point, however, the entry of Sylvia's restaurant into the international marketplace through the manufacture and distribution of its food products, beginning with its bottled barbecue sauce. It says that they decided to roll out an entire line of African ethnic foods for the retail market. So not only do they have a restaurant in Harlem, they also have a company called Sylvia's Food Products Incorporated, which distributes, it says, African ethnic foods for the retail market.
Yeah, I got one called The Grub too. Was the brother from I forgot his name. He conscious brother. He the Pan African organization out there in Baltimore. You got a vegan restaurant that they just opened up.
You're talking about brother Amos.
Yeah.
Brother Fatio. Yes, very familiar with that organization.
They got a restaurant now too, called the Grub Factory.
Oh yeah, I've been there several times, brother.
How's the food?
Excellent. Okay. Excellent. I go get the vegetarian gyro. They have the vegetarian pancake, vegan pancakes, tofu, and vegan desserts. They have their own little half and half. They have sandwiches. Like, it's really good. Okay. Very, very good. Very good. You got to come out here one day, Brother Travis, and I'll take you around, brother.
Yes, indeed. I plan on doing that because I'm going to look at y'all graduate program there. Definitely be out there, probably the spring.
All right, cool. So moving on, it says African peoples, the white man's golden geese. Can somebody summarize this? 2 sections left. There's this one and Black self-employment. So can someone summarize that?
African peoples, the white man's golden geese. It has been the same since the beginning. In the Americas, it began with slavery. It has continued unabated in multitudinous shapes and guises to the present moment. African peoples prove to be one of the white man's most fabulous sources of wealth, his golden geese, who lay his golden eggs. Some may say that these people are golden sheep sheared of their golden fleece by white rustlers. No matter how it is metaphorically or allegorically described, it always amounts to the same thing. Black people producing and consuming to enrich others while impoverishing themselves. Mm-hmm. Whether we speak of slavery, peonage, menial labor, glass ceiling, sports, music, or cosmetics, wherever they generate millions or billions of dollars, whether through forced or wage labor, through creative, culturally based productive activity, or reactionarily conditioned consumerism, Blacks have allowed the fruits of their labor to be eaten by others while they hungrily scavenge among the leftovers. Woo. Since emancipation, this white instigated feat has been accomplished through the activation of one basic Eurocentric free market rule: prevent Blacks from having access to the marketplaces of others and prevent them from having access to their own marketplaces. So he basically goes through speaking about the cosmetic industry. Some 12 to 15% of the U.S. population reportedly consume more than African Americans consume more than 30% of its gross cosmetics production. Also published in the Final Call, Kente cloth and red, black, and green mean big bucks for white businesses. Charles Johnson, president of Ashaway Inc., a Dallas-based lotion and cream manufacturer, complains that 15 major non-Black distributors deliver Black-orientated products made by white-owned companies to retailers, but won't deliver products made by Black-owned companies. And we were just talking about that, you know, how they shut us out of our own creations.
Yep, on market.
Yeah, you know, once they because they have the money to distribute on a larger scale, and then they just shut us out of it. You know, they copy it and make us think that it's a Black product, but it isn't. Like, a lot of people think a lot of these entertainers that have all these products are Black owned. They're not. They're fronted, you know, by white corporations.
That's right.
They're the face, but not the creator.
The final call goes on to report that Black business persons commonly complain that when these distributors reluctantly condescend to deliver Black-made products to retailers, they gouge Black consumers and make unconscionably large per unit profits by pricing these products some 40 to 60% higher than necessary. Wow. And he speaks on major retailers such as giant supermarkets and drugstore chains collude with distributors in this process. And if we go to 652, the African American community can no longer afford to let other ethnic communities own, control, and broker its labor, culture, and cultural products. The making and selling of its own cultural symbols and products in community and world markets by non-African manufacturers and merchants represents a gross insult to a poverty-stricken, underemployed African community, which cannot afford to endure for 1 second more its exploitation by aliens. And on 653, there's a graph. Okay. Hiring patterns. 60% of Black-owned firms have workforces that are at least 75% minority, a comparison with other firms. Among Black-owned businesses, financial services firms have the greatest proportion of minority workers. So percentage of firms with workforces at least 75% minority, Black-owned firms at 60%, Hispanic-owned firms at 52%, Asian-owned firms 41%, and non-minority-owned firms are 11%. Finance, insurance, and real estate, 63.6%. Selected services, 61.9%. Retail trade, 60.6%. Agriculture, 58.9%. Transportation, 58.4%. Construction, 56.3%. Manufacturing, 55.4%. And wholesale trade, 46%. So basically, I mean, we do all the hiring of other groups, and as it says here, like non-minority owned firms are 11% of hiring Black people, or they basically hire their own people. Right. Another graph, a narrow market on 654, almost half of Black-owned businesses have a customer base that is at least 75% minority. Black-owned firms, 45.3%. Hispanic-owned firms, Asian, 26.1%, and non-minority-owned firms, 11.9%. And among Black-owned businesses, financial service firms lead those reporting a customer base that is at least 75% minority. So, I mean, if we're not supporting our own businesses, we're not, we don't have any customers, exactly. Or very, very small amount of the pie.
Wow.
Woo. Okay. At 6:55, it says we must not. What were you saying, brother?
A very small pie.
Yeah.
Pop.
Okay, 6:55, we must not construe these figures to mean that Black-owned businesses have captured the majority of Black and minority customers, not by a long shot. They indicate that these businesses are more or less totally dependent on a very small percentage of Black and minority customers. This means that if they are to expand and increase the employment of Black workers, they must capture a rapidly expanding number of Black customers and an increasingly larger share of the Black consumer dollar. Furthermore, if they are to compete in the national and international marketplaces, they must strategically hire more Black workers from other ethnic groups, redesign their establishments, and redefine their tactics and techniques in order to overcome the market resistance of other communities. Wow. And this is the last paragraph. However, for African Americans and Africans across the diaspora, business begins at home. It begins with the capturing and servicing of their home markets, and securing the loyalty of their own compatriots. It begins with actualizing the potential of their own cultures, developing, controlling, and owning their own cultural products.
That's
with
right.
Their home base secured, when they may then they may venture forth to capture new territories and bring home wondrous trophies of economic war.
Bam! I wish I had a one of those things China has when it's like a bomb goes off. You know,
a drum beat, African drum beat.
I'll have that for you next week.
Yes, man. Baba ended that with, you know, a very, very powerful statements. He's saying that business begins at home. It begins with capturing. And see, Sister Alima was just talking about that. She said a lot of these celebrities, they take their money, they say, okay, I'm gonna go over to Africa, and we're not knocking that, right? They'll take the money, say, I'm gonna go over to Africa and build a school. I'm gonna go invest over there. Dr. Amos Wilson says business begins at home. It begins with capturing and servicing of their home markets and securing the loyalty of their own compatriots, right? It begins with actualizing the potentials of their own cultures, developing and controlling and owning their own cultural products. With their home base secured, then they may venture forth to capture new territories and bring home wondrous trophies of economic war. That's Black power. So next week, family, we're going to be discussing chapter 25, the relationship of white-owned banks to the Black community. This is a short chapter, family, but we're going to have some fun. I think this chapter is only like 17 or 18 pages. So, you know, we'll have some fun. That'll give us a break because we went in tonight, 70 pages of Dr. Amos Wilson. And, you know, Baba, each page is like reading 5 pages of information because he put so much content, so much information into one page. So, and we read 70 of them. So essentially it's like we read a book tonight, almost a book. And I think that everyone on the panel did a wonderful job. Very interesting input. I appreciate all of the perspectives that were uttered. Thank you for joining us. I see we had 12 people. Look, we got all the way up to like 30, and then we went all the way back to 12 folks. So for the folks who hung in there, I want to thank you. I'm getting ready to play the outro, Sister Camille.
All right.
Getting ready to play the outro. So I love you guys. Peace and power. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
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 One of these days, and it won't be long. Resurgence of the African mind. One of these days, and it won't be long. Resurgence of the African mind. One of these days, and it won't be long. Resurgence of the African mind. One of these days, and it won't be long. Resurgence of the African mind. One of these days, and it won't be long. Resurgence of the African mind. One of these days, and it won't be long. Resurgence of the African mind. And it won't be long. Resurgence of the African mind. One of these days, and it won't be long.
Resurgence of the African mind.
One of these days, and it won't be long.
Resurgence of the African mind.
One of these days, and it won't be long.
Resurgence of the African mind.
One of these days, and it won't be long.
Resurgence of the African mind.
One of these days, and it won't be long.
Resurgence of the African mind.
All right, y'all. I was just showing you products to buy. Peace and power, family. See you next week.